That's us live, Chair.
Yep. The meeting's open to the public. I welcome members to the 42nd meeting of the Committee for Finance in the 22-27 mandate. I advise members that the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. I advise members and those in the public gallery that they are welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode and all devices are muted. They can connect to Assembly Wi-Fi. Password details are available on the gallery rules. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. So agenda item 1 is apologies. Members' apologies have been received from Matthew O'Toole and Philip Brett. We have Gemma Dolan and Deirdre Hargey on Zoom, and Owen Tennyson and Jerry Carroll due to join us very shortly. Agenda item 2, declarations of interests. All members are obliged to declare any relevant or financial or other interests at each committee meeting as applicable. Have any members relevant interests to declare? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, chairperson's business. At this point, I want to say congratulations to our chair, Matthew O'Toole, and his wife on the birth of their daughter last week. Was it Thursday? Thursday. So congratulations to Matthew. I'll put it on the record and pass on the committee's best wishes. Item 3.1 of the agenda, the Minister of Finance issued notice on the Death, Stillbirth and Baby Loss Bill. We received an advance copy of the Death, Stillbirth and Baby Loss Bill and the accompanying explanatory and financial memorandum prior to the introduction of the bill in the Assembly. The Executive agreed to the bill's introduction at its meeting of the 6th of March 2025 and it was introduced in the Assembly yesterday, the 25th of March. Therefore, the restricted marking on the bill and the explanatory and financial memorandum in the pack is no longer current as these have been published. Following the second stage of the bill on Monday the 7th of April, it's anticipated that the bill will be referred to the committee. I ask members to note the bill and the explanatory and financial memorandum at this stage, pending a full consideration at a later committee meeting. In the meantime, the committee team will liaise with the DALO and RAISE to schedule research and briefing as appropriate and also prepare a draft timetable for proposed committee scrutiny. In the interim, it may be beneficial to obtain an update from the Department about the consultation around the bill provisions. I seek agreement of members to obtain information from the Department in this regard. Thank you. Okay, item 3.2, the 2025 Balmoral Show. I refer members to page 28 of the meeting pack and highlight to members that the committee has received correspondence from the Assembly's Public Engagement Manager indicating that the Assembly Commission will have a presence at the 2025 Balmoral Show from the 14th to the 17th of May and that there's potential for committee participation. As there is an anticipated high level of interest and based on an expectation that most committees would want to come on Wednesday or Thursday, 2-hour time slots are anticipated with a view to extending that when possible. The committee has been asked to indicate by Friday the 11th of April whether it wishes to participate in the Balmoral show. So at this point, I seek members' views on our committee utilising a slot on Wednesday, the 14th of May, in place of a committee meeting as an opportunity to engage and survey those attending the show in respect of our banking inquiry. It's expected that there will be a considerable mix of the public and stakeholders present. I seek members' agreement to indicate to the Assembly Engagement Manager, Stevie.
Yeah, I would fully endorse that because I think it's an area we should be at. And it does give us an opportunity to reach across all of Northern Ireland and particularly issues of banking. But there'll be other issues that people will be interested as well and want to come and talk to the committee about some of our areas. Everything from small business rates relief and a wide variety of it. So actually highlighting it and letting people know we're going to be there and then inviting people to come and engage with us might be quite useful as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. I agree. There's a great range of stakeholders, especially that with the banking inquiry link, and I think would be really good. So are members in agreement that we can indicate to the Assembly Engagement Manager a preferred slot of the Wednesday afternoon in place of our committee meeting and that the clerk would draw up a potential programme for the committee activity on that day?
Chair, I should flag up that we have, because of this coming in at this stage, we'd already got a a briefing on the interim fiscal framework scheduled for that day. If members are content, we'll seek to reorganise that. We also have Finance Innovation Lab that day. They're travelling, so we may need to find a way to accommodate that, because I appreciate members will want to. It presents a great opportunity. Doing the Balmoral show presents a great opportunity for us to do something live and interactive in surveying around the banking inquiry. We won't necessarily get another opportunity to do that. So if members are content, we will have to do some shifting with the forward work programme, potentially get very creative, Chair, on that. But if members are content on the principle that we will go back to engagement and let them know that we're going to take a slot for the Balmoral show.
Sorry, through the chair. It was the interim
fiscal framework. So we'd thought an update at that point, because it was it would be not quite, or it would be pretty much a year since the interim fiscal framework was signed off. So we'd sort of said we'd get an update at that time scale. That can probably be rescheduled. The Finance Innovation Lab are travelling to come to see us. So we'll probably need to do something more creative around that.
They come and see us at Balmoral?
Potentially. And it's the logistics of how we make that work. Chair, if members leave that with us, we will come up with a creative solution.
Yeah. Just on the interim fiscal statement, again, sorry, apologies, Chair. Of course, CST or the CSR won't be out until...
We're probably looking at June. We don't know when.
Yeah, so maybe it might be useful for putting it at the other side of the
potentially,
CSR.
Chair, that could
because
work better.
We're all going to be asking questions about money, which they're not going to be able to answer, because the answer will be, we can't tell you until we get to the CSR, and the CSR is happening the month after.
Chair, if members are content, we look to slide that a bit further down then.
Yeah.
We haven't booked anything in June yet, I don't think. I'm talking to Clarita for confirmation. I don't think we've got into June yet for scheduling. Okay. So we could look to slide that one down, and we'll work on a creative solution to the Innovation Lab. We'll find a way, Chair. We'll find a way.
No, I think that's great, and I agree with Steve. And you want to make the most out of that visit whenever you have it at the best time. They have a good relationship with us, and we had Sir Robert even last week as well. So we are engaging regularly. And it'll be good to make the most of that session. But I think that for us to be at the Balmoral show with a good presence from the Finance Committee is really, really important. A good place to be. Okay, thank you. So moving to the table pack, item 3.3, the Interparliamentary Finance Committee Forum, referring members to page 4 of the table pack. Just want to say last week I thought that it went really well. Just want to thank the clerk team for all their hard work in bringing that together. I really enjoyed it. I think that everybody got a lot out of the engagement, and it was really positive. So following on from last week's Interparliamentary Finance Committee Forum, a draft of the joint communique has been finalised and agreed by the committee chairs. The clerk was going to give us an update on that and some other actions coming out of it.
So, Chair, the members will recall that the meeting had agreed that chairs would sign off on the joint communique, which hopefully will publish either tomorrow or Friday. I think it's going to likely be Friday. It's being noted by the other committees the latter part of this week as well. So from there, we'll work collectively on the correspondence that will go to the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, which the meeting had also agreed would be copied to the Treasury Select Committee. So we'll start work on that. That hopefully will get done, that we can bring to the committees for agreement fairly quickly, the next couple of weeks anyway. And we'll see where we go beyond that. We'll also work collectively, Chair, on the legacy report that the members talked about as well last week. Just to come in behind, Chair, what you had said, the feedback we've had from the other jurisdictions has been immensely positive. I think having the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, even though it was briefly, was a bit of a game changer for the forum. They'd struggled before to get any presence from Treasury. That has set a precedent, and the forum would very much look to build on that. So with the elections happening next year in Scotland and Wales, we're probably looking at a later date in the year than we would normally have gone for. So we're probably looking at autumn 2026 for the next meeting. We may have to consider hosting that one as well, Chair. Scotland and Wales may not be in a position to quickly get up and running for something like that, so it's something the committee might want to just keep in mind. But otherwise, positive, very, very positive feedback, and those are the actions that we'll be bringing to committee in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Are members in agreement that we note and agree that this is published?
Can I just make a quick thank you very much indeed for the team for all the hard work you put in making it work. It did work well. And I know that we've been in hiatus for probably far too long and they weren't doing those things, but I think, and if we're being invited to host next time, I think we should. Yeah, we owe them a few.
We have a template now, Chair, so it just makes things that bit easier to roll out again.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you. So moving on, item 3.4, the Committee for Finance and Committee for the Economy Northern Ireland Assembly budget event, the 29th of January 2025. So just to inform members that the report and motion on the joint event with the Economy Committee on the 29th of January was agreed by the Economy Committee at its meeting on the 12th of March. Members had previously agreed a motion on the report, and that motion has now been laid in the Business Office and translated into the House style. The debate has been scheduled for Tuesday, the 8th of April at 2:45 p.m. In advance, the report will be formally laid in the Assembly's Business Office and Library, published online and circulated to all MLAs and the Department. I want to seek members' agreement that this report is laid in the Business Office and Library, published on the committee web pages and delivered to all MLAs through the ECP postbox. And it would also be opportune to inform the relevant stakeholders who attended the joint event that the report has been published and a debate would take place. Are members in agreement?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Item 3.5, the Finance Interministerial Standing Committee, or FISC as it's known, readout. During the session at last week's Interparliamentary Forum, the Minister of Finance mentioned discussions at a recent FISC. I seek members' agreement to ask the Department for a readout of the discussions and agreement reached at this. This could also be an issue on which to engage with the Minister at the oral evidence session scheduled for the 7th of May and for continuous updates going forward, including notice of the meetings and seeking ministerial briefing following these. Members' agreement? Yeah, thank you. Moving to agenda item 4, the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of March 2025. I refer members to page 31 of the meeting pack and ask members, are they content that the minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting held on the 12th of March 2025? Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, happy. Sign it. Sign it here. Bottom here. Yep. That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so agenda item 5 is matters arising. So item 5.1, the Minister of Finance summary report on key issues in the Northern Ireland banking sector. I refer members to page 46 of the meeting pack. The Minister has provided a summary report on the key issues from the roundtable event on the 20th of November 2024, which links to the Committee's banking inquiry. The issues raised broadly fall under 3 areas of ensuring access to cash and services, promoting financial inclusions and stakeholder engagement through managing change. The report is also being shared with Treasury and the FCA to set out the key issues discussed and seek a formal response as appropriate given their policy and regulatory responsibilities for banking and financial services. A further issue raised at the event was the need for more local engagement on banking matters to keep abreast of issues facing the sector. Therefore, to build on the collaborative engagement to date and to ensure that he is fully briefed on local issues within the sector, the Minister has agreed to convene further roundtable events on an annual basis. And it's good to see coming through in that report a lot of the similar issues and themes that we've been seeing coming through in our inquiry. So I ask our members in agreement that we note this readout and agree to the inclusion of the summary in the Committee's inquiry report.
Great.
Thank you. Item 5.2, Communities Minister, written ministerial statement on funding for co-ownership. I refer members to page 62 of the meeting pack. The Minister for Communities has laid a written ministerial statement in the Assembly announcing a significant loan of 153 million FTC funding for co-ownership housing association. The Minister indicates that this funding will help 4,000 households buy their own home over the next 4 years. 1,200 of these being new build houses, and that every £1 of government borrowing will leverage an approximate £4 of private and mortgaged finance. The Minister has also announced an increase in the property value limit for eligible homes to £210,000 from the 1st of April 2025. And I ask members to note this use of FTC as it has come up in conversations in this committee, and just to make the point that it is being used. And I just wanted to raise at this point where we're seeing this example of FTC being used in this way. I wonder if we're engaging with perhaps Joanne in the next session or wider finance directors, could we ask if all finance directors are well versed in this, or looking for opportunities, or what their opinions are within the different departments? Yes, Steve?
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. I noticed Gordon's announcement this morning about 600 houses, and I think that's to be welcome, because it's anything we can do to sort that problem. Could we ask the question whether that he's utilising FTC for that? Because I'm not 100% certain if that is being done by FTC. Like, it would make eminently sensible use of the funding if it was, but just wanted to sort of, if we had any update on that, and whether that would be a useful use of FTC if it was.
You can ask, yeah.
Yeah.
And
just wasn't clear from the announcement where the funding was coming from.
And would members be content if we sought a bit more information on the communication of the use of FTCs around the finance director group?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Thank you.
So item 5.3, Department of Finance Procurement Policy Note and Press Release. I refer members to page 64 of the meeting pack. The department has notified the committee that the executive has approved revisions to the Procurement Policy Note PPN 0421, procurement control limits, to take account of the significant increase in inflation over the last 5 years and the impact on the processes required for low value procurement competitions. The proposed increases are effective immediately and are outlined in the PPN. The department's press release is also provided at page 74 of the meeting pack. I ask members to note. Item 5.4, the Department of Finance Northern Ireland Fiscal Council update on member appointments. So I refer members to page 76 of the meeting pack. The department has provided an update on the membership of the Fiscal Council. Alan Barrett has returned to his previous member role on the council and reappointed for a term up to 31st of March 2026. Extensions were offered to and accepted by the other two members, Dr. Esmond Burney and Maureen O'Reilly, also up to March 2026. It is indicated that this will allow for the passage of the Fiscal Council Bill in the Assembly and consideration of how a formal public appointments process is then undertaken in line with CPANI guidelines. I ask members to note.
Yeah, note.
Thank you. So item 5.5, Department of Finance response to Agriculture Committee regarding NICS sickness absence. I refer members to page 77 of the meeting pack. We've been copied into a response from the Department of Finance to the Agriculture Committee regarding NICS sickness absence. The department has provided the Agriculture Committee with previous correspondence to this committee, along with a copy of the Health and Wellbeing Strategy, Action Plan and the Line Manager brochure. A short summary of measures to address sickness absence has also been copied to the Agriculture Committee. We've noted before that there's the wider NICS sickness absence, something the committee would like to revisit in future, but at this point can I ask members to note?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5.6, the draft budget 25-26 Education Committee response. I refer members to page 121 of the meeting pack. We've received a response from the Education Committee to our round robin call for committee responses to the draft budget 25-26. I seek members' agreement to note and publish the response on the committee's webpage, and subject to agreement later in today's meeting, it would be also incorporated into a compilation report. Are members in agreement?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Item 5.7, PAC Committee Primacy on Reports. At this point, just to declare I'm also a member of the Public Accounts Committee. I refer members to page 128 of the meeting pack. The Public Accounts Committee has agreed to retain primacy on the NIAO report into ambulance handovers in Northern Ireland, published on the 11th of March 2025, and have agreed to release the NIAO report into tackling waiting lists, published in October 2023, which it will not be considering further. A table has also been provided detailing reports that the PAC retains primacy with. I ask members to note at this stage.
Yeah, just a quick one. Just slightly tangentially, Chair, with your indulgence. I noticed that the Infrastructure Minister has brought in the forensic accountants, which is it's just unusual as having your accounts disclaimed, I think. Do you know if the PAC's taken any interest in that?
And again, just as I am a member of the PAC, also we're meeting tomorrow, so
right, okay.
I will certainly bring that up at committee and
It's just
see what the view
it is an
Yeah.
unusual occurrence, and maybe it's something this committee would be mindful of. I mean, you don't get forensic accountants in just to see where you had a small overspend.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely, I agree that. Any action for us as Finance Committee? Maybe
We
you
just,
could
we
liaise
just
with
keep an
Lucia.
eye on that. I'll talk to the PAC clerk to see where
Yeah.
that ends up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're meeting tomorrow, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Moving to item 5.8, the TEO Committee regarding primacy on Renewable Heat Incentive Scheme report. I refer members to page 130 of the meeting pack. The TEO Committee has written to the committee seeking members' plans in relation to the Northern Ireland Audit Office reports on the Northern Ireland Non-Domestic Renewable Heat Incentive Scheme released by PAC at its meeting of the 27th of February 2025. Members will recall that at the meeting on the 5th of March, the committee agreed to maintain a watching briefing on the recommendations of the public inquiry at present and to seek an update from the Department of Finance on the next 6-monthly progress update on recommendations in September, when members can discuss the work that they would like to undertake in relation to this report. I think that with regard to this report, it's under the Finance Minister's responsibility. He's reporting periodically on the recommendations on the RHI scheme report, and I think I would be perfectly content that it sits with us in Finance Committee, and I would seek members' agreement to inform the TEO Committee of this. Yeah, thank you. Item 5.9, the banking inquiry. We have a response from the National Association of Sub-Postmasters. I refer members to page 131 of the meeting pack. Following the committee briefing on the 12th of March 2025, the National Association of Sub-Postmasters were asked to provide follow-up information on the number of passport applications, both Irish and UK, currently accepted at post office counters in Northern Ireland, and how the numbers have reduced as a result of the digital first policy adopted about 5 years ago by government passport departments in both jurisdictions. It is indicated that paper-based applications appear to have dropped by 85 to 90%. This has been tempered a little with some branches in the introduction of a tablet, allowing online UK passport applications to be completed in branch. Exact figures are being sought, but further detail does not have any direct relevance to the terms of reference to our committee's inquiry into banking. I ask members to note. 10. Thank you. Item 5.10 is a news story. Anger as ATM runs out of cash. And I refer members to page 133 of the meeting pack, where there is a copy of a newspaper article highlighting the issue of access to cash in rural towns in Scotland, which relates to our banking inquiry. And on sight of this, I've spoken to the clerk about it, and obviously as part of our banking inquiry we can see that there's no one in government who's got an oversight or a view or control of ATMs, but I would like to try to get a feel for how prevalent this is, because a couple of times in the past month I went to my own local ATM and it's been out of cash, and I've had to go inside to the post office, and they're feeding back to me that this is really regular, the ATM's running out of money. So I just would like to see if we could grasp how widespread this is across the board. So I just would seek members' agreement that we note this news article and add it to our inquiry's evidence base, as well as potentially writing to Retail NI to see if it's a widespread issue, and following any response the committee might be able to take this up with Link as well. Seek members' agreement.
Great.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Chair.
you can tell.
We're still, Chair, organising a briefing with Link for the banking inquiry. They do the location scouting, members will recall, for the banking hubs. So it would just be useful to get an interactive session with them about just exactly how that's working, because I think evidence we've had so far has thrown up a few queries about just how the banking hubs actually will work. We've got a more balanced view now from various stakeholders as to how they see them happening. And obviously next week members will get a chance to see the hub in Kilkeel live in action, as it were, and it'll just mean that there's a bit more evidence there for members to reflect on. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think from the couple of sessions where we've had feedbacks from, postmasters, post office as well, there's a lot of fallback on people having to go into the post office to lift the cash. So I don't know how accurate we'll be able to get figures to it, but it would be interesting to get a feel for ATMs running out of cash and how widespread it would be. Sorry, I thought there was an issue there, but it's yes, dissolving, is it? Sorry, just there's a there's a wee.
What was that?
We're okay.
Was interference on this side?
All's
Sorry,
well.
Chair.
It's just a different room today. Okay. Apologies. Item 511, the Dallow readout extract of requests made following the 19th of February meeting. The Dallow readout extract provided at page 138 of today's pack is the readout issued following the meeting on the 19th of February. 2 responses received on the 12th of March are provided at items 512 and 513. So item 512 is the Dallow readout response on Fujitsu contracts. I refer members to page 137 of the meeting pack. Members had requested clarity on how the Cabinet Office work feeds through to the Department of Finance, and also for information on CPD's officials' engagement with the Cabinet Crown Commercial representatives in Cabinet Office, as referenced in the update to committee in February 2024. Members also requested information on the One Government meeting and outputs which departmental officials attended with key contracting authorities meeting on the 6th of February. The department has indicated that at that meeting, the key performance indicators were discussed, and as such, the most recent KPIs from Fujitsu had been provided. I seek members' agreement to note this and keep a watching briefing on any further developments highlighted by the department. Members agreed? Thank you. Item 513, the Dallow readout response on the procurement board, and I refer members to page 145 of the meeting pack. Members had requested an update on the current status of the procurement board. The department indicates that the board was reconstituted in December 2020 by the then Finance Minister Conor Murphy. Members were appointed by the Minister to act as his advisors. The board could not operate in the absence of a minister, and therefore its function ceased in September 2022 when the minister left office. The department has provided a copy of the Memorandum of Reply to the PAC report on public procurement in Northern Ireland, indicating that it is committed to carrying out an independent review to identify the most appropriate structure for overseeing the development and implementation of procurement policy and monitoring the performance of the procurement function. The Executive will approve this. The interim arrangements are in place for reviewing and implementing procurement policy, which includes engagement with COPES, department and external stakeholders. I ask members to note this update at this stage. Thank you. Item 514, Dallow readout extract of requests made following the 26th of February meeting. The Dallow readout extract is provided at page 154 of today's pack. The readout issued following the meeting on the 26th of February. The 2 responses received on the 13th of March are provided at items 515 and 516. Item 515, the Dallow readout response on the budget 25-26. I refer members to page 155 of the meeting pack. Members had requested clarity on the status of the budget for 25-26 and asked if this has now been agreed by the Executive, and the department indicates that the final 25-26 budget will be agreed by the Executive, and officials can then provide a further update. Well, it was to be later in today's meeting, and for those who've just joined us, the Department of Finance officials won't be briefing us later today, and we're trying to reschedule for earlier in the week. They're off to work supporting the budget that's coming through live as we're sitting here today. So whenever we get that rescheduled, we'll have that briefing. So I ask members to note this update pending the briefing. Yep, thank you. Item 516, the Dallow readout response on the SEUPB accounts 2023. Refer members to page 156 of the meeting pack. Members asked for information on the reasons why prompt payment to suppliers within 10 days had dropped from 95.64% in 2022 to 72% in 2023, and for clarity on the position for prompt payment on invoices to suppliers in the current year. It is indicated that SEUPB did not have the budget authority to spend or pay suppliers without business plan approval from the Department of Finance on core administration costs, and the Peace Plus financing agreement in place on programme technical assistance. The timeline details when the agreements was reached, and for the year ended 31st of December 2024, the prompt payment figure is sitting at 95.03. Ask members to note this information. Thank you. Item 517, DALO readout extract of requests made following the 5th of March meeting. The DALO readout extract provided at page 157 of today's pack is the readout issued following the meeting on the 5th of March. The 4 responses received on the 19th of March are provided in items 518 to 521. So running through item 518, the DALO readout response on the Public Sector Transformation Board. So I refer members to page 159 of the meeting pack. Members previously considered the ministerial oral statement on transformation funding and sought further information. The department indicates that the PSTB Secretariat will feed back to the 5 other Stage 2 unsuccessful proposals, and there will be an opportunity to resubmit. The NICS Digital Maturity Assessment will take approximately 12 weeks to complete. The latest profile of the spend from departments has been provided, and it is confirmed that funding is ring-fenced for these projects. General conditions for funding has also been provided, and again the committee is referred to TO for details of the delivery unit's work, given its lead role in this regard. The committee had previously agreed to schedule an oral briefing when further information had been considered. I ask members for their agreement to delay the briefing as a result of the workload created by the committee's current work streams, including the scrutiny it will undertake on the registration bill. Great, thank you. Item 519, DALO readout response on the PAC reports RHI. I refer members to page 162 of the meeting pack. The department has confirmed it will provide an update on the PAC RHI reports in line with the next round of monitoring. This will be provided in September. I ask members to note as the issue was discussed previously. Thank you. Item 520, the DALO readout response on capital easements. Refer members to page 163 of the meeting pack. Members had previously noted information provided in relation to capital easements as a result of ongoing legal challenge. A procurement challenge to the award of a framework agreement to be used by CPD to deliver small construction works projects not normally exceeding £500,000 each in value. The department has indicated that delivery of these projects may be in jeopardy and that the capital programme is reviewed regularly throughout the year, which can lead to reprioritisation of the individual projects. I seek members' agreement to request that the department keeps the committee fully informed as to the status of the legal challenge. Yep. Great, thank you. Item 521, DALO readout response in the Northern Ireland Investment Fund. I refer members to page 164 of the meeting pack.
Our declaration of interest, I'm aware of that, so I'll not make comment on this.
Thank you. Members requested that we are kept informed of developments in respect of the fund's final years around the winding up process and any developments in relation of a successor fund. The department has provided details of the appointment terms for the scrutiny board as well as pen portraits for each member. I seek members' agreement to note this information at present and to agree to consider an informal briefing from members of the Fund's Scrutiny Board. Agreed? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so and thank you very much to the DALO and the clerk team for all of those responses. There's quite a lot there, so it's good to get through them all and get the information. Thanks very much for your work on that. So moving on to agenda item 6, the SL1, the Pensions Increase Review Order, Northern Ireland 2025. I refer members to page 169 of the meeting pack for a clerk's cover note and relevant papers. The Department intends to bring forward a statutory rule to make provision for the annual increase of official pensions. The public sector pensions in payment and deferred pensions are reviewed in April each year to take account of the change in the cost of living. The review is with reference to the September to September change in the Consumer Prices Index in the previous 12 months. The order provides for an increase of 1.7% from the 7th of April 2025 for all official pensions, except for those which have been in payment for less than a year, which will receive a pro rata increase. The proposed statutory rule is not to be subject to any assembly procedure and will come into operation on the 7th of April 2025. The SL1 is for noting purposes only. Full details of the proposed rule, consultation and impacts can be found at page 171 of the meeting pack. I ask members, are they content to note this policy proposal?
Noted.
Thank you. So, agenda item 7, the draft SR 2025/0000, the recognition of professional qualifications and implementation of international recognition agreements, amendment, extension to Switzerland, etc., Regulations Northern Ireland 2025. I refer members to page 175 of the meeting pack for a clerk's cover note and relevant correspondence from the Department. The Department has formally laid a draft statutory rule which will implement provisions on the agreement between the UK and the Swiss Confederation on the recognition of professional qualifications insofar as they relate to the legal profession in Northern Ireland. This agreement requires the UK and Switzerland to recognise comparable professional qualifications or experience obtained in each state. UK regulators are required to have processes in place to recognise Swiss qualifications or experience should a professional apply to practice a profession regulated by law in the UK. Legislative implementation of the agreement ensures that the UK is fulfilling its obligations to Switzerland, and it provides consistency and clarity for professionals holding Swiss qualifications or experience when applying to practice regulated professions in the United Kingdom. Legislative implementation ensures that UK regulators have the necessary legal powers to meet the terms of the agreement. It also gives Swiss professionals relying on the agreement some legal recourse in the UK were this ever needed. This SR replaces SR previously laid as SR 2025/10 on the 24th of January 2025. This new SR corrects a technical error identified in discussion with the examiner of statutory rules in the procedure used to lay and make the rule, for which the Department apologises. The rule will be subject to draft affirmative resolution procedure and will come into operation after it is debated and affirmed in the Assembly. The debate currently is scheduled for Monday the 31st of March. At its meeting of the 15th of January 2025, the committee agreed that it was content with the proposed statutory rule. The Department has stated there have been no changes to the policy content since that time. Full details of the draft rule, consultation and impacts can be found at page 178 of the meeting pack. In her 35th report to the Assembly, the Examiner of Statutory Rules has not drawn this rule to the attention of the Assembly. This report can be found at page 7 of the tabled pack. I ask members if they are content with this draft statutory rule. Okay, and if so, I put the question that the Committee for Finance has considered SR 2025/000, the recognition of professional qualifications and implementation of international recognition agreements, amendment, extension to Switzerland, etc., Regulations Northern Ireland 2025, and recommends that it be affirmed by the Assembly. Great.
Right.
Thank you. Water. Thank you. Okay, so agenda item 8, SR 2025/43, the Rates Social Sector Value Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2025. I refer members to page 189 of the meeting pack for a clerk's cover note and relevant correspondence from the Department. The Department has formally laid a statutory rule which will amend the 2007 Rates Social Value Regulations to update the list of housing associations within those regs as one has changed its name. The list enclosed highlights the current schedule and the SR details the amendment. Woven Housing Association Limited was formerly Happen Tag Housing Association. The SR is subject to negative resolution procedure, and the end of the statutory period has been calculated as the 28th of April 2025. It will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025. At its meeting of the 19th of February 2025, the committee agreed that it was content with the proposed statutory rule. The Department has stated that there have been no changes to the policy content since that time. Full details of the proposed rule, consultation and impacts can be found at page 193 of the meeting pack. In her 35th report to the examiner, or to the Assembly, the examiner of statutory rules has not drawn this rule to the attention of the Assembly. This report can be found at page 7 of the table pack. I ask members, are they content with the statutory rule? And if so, put the question that the Committee for Finance has considered SR 2025/43, the Rates Social Sector Value Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2025, and has no objection to the rule. Thank you. Agenda item 9, SR 2025/44, the Valuation, Telecommunications, Natural Gas and Water Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2025. I refer members to page 199 of the meeting pack for a clerk's cover note and relevant correspondence from the Department. The Department has formally laid statutory rule which will amend the Valuation, Telecommunications, Natural Gas and Water Regulations Northern Ireland 2010. These regs make provision for the treatment as a single hereditament for non-domestic rating purposes of certain property which would otherwise be treated as several hereditaments. The nature of telecommunications and natural gas undertakings requires companies working in these fields to occupy or own various properties in more than one place, for example, cables, underground and apparatus. The 1977 Rates Order empowers the Department to treat various properties or component parts owned by any one company to be treated as one for rating purposes. The schedule to the 2010 regulations lists the telecommunications and natural gas companies currently operating in Northern Ireland and liable for rates on their property. The new schedule within two new market entrants is outlined in the SR, Next Fibre and Netomnia. The SR is subject to the negative resolution procedure, and the end of the statutory period has been calculated as the 28th of April 2025. It will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025, and at its meeting of the 19th of February 2025, the committee agreed that it was content with the proposed statutory rule. However, members did request further information and background on the companies joining the market. However, LPS neither holds additional information in respect of, nor has any rule in the licensing of these operators, which is a matter for the Department for Economy and Ofcom Northern Ireland. The Department has stated that there have been no changes to the policy content since that time. Full details of the proposed rule, consultation and impacts can be found at page 201 of the meeting pack. In our 35th report to the Assembly, the Examiner of Statutory Rules has not drawn this rule to the attention of the Assembly. This report can be found at page 7 of the table pack. I ask members, are they content with the statutory rule?
Chair, just before we do that, just to go back, they said that they didn't have it. We asked them for any details of the new companies coming on because we weren't sure who they were, because actually they're getting LPS benefit and rates. But they've come back and said, we don't hold those details. It's nothing to do with us. We just do exactly as we're being told by the Department of Economy and Ofcom.
Yeah, it's because they're the licensing authorities, and they will have. DOF doesn't have any capacity or remit to do, I suppose, due diligence on those companies. That's done by another department. So they would only proceed with this once that's done. But DOF and LPS don't have that role. But it is being done. It's I suppose it's an example of where departments divide in interesting ways.
It just seems strange because this is a net benefit to the companies. There's a financial benefit here, which and LPS are basically saying, well, we don't know anything about these companies. We're just responding. I can't think of LPS doing that for anybody else, to be honest.
They just hold the information.
Yeah, so my reading of it there is that LPS doesn't hold the information, but they're placing reliance on the fact that the Department for Economy and Ofcom are telling them that they have regulated them. So, yeah, Jared.
Yeah, no, I agree with Steve's point. That's sort of why I
we
was
asked the
pressing the
question.
information, sure. And it's like, I have no reason to cast aspersions on the organisations. They may well be, great, or they may not be great, but the fact that we're not getting information on who they are, even at a basic level, is, concerning to put it mildly. So just to read it at that point.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. And I'm just trying to think. I think it's maybe where LPS are saying they're relying on the licensing of them through the Department for Economy and Ofcom. It would have been good if they had a further sentence to say we have completed due diligence and confirmed they have licensing. I think perhaps
You may have an update on this.
Okay.
I'm just looking to Clarita there.
This
'cause
was the
too
information
far away to
whenever
see.
Jerry asked for it.
Okay, so the information, I'll just read it off Clarita's screen whenever Jerry had asked this before. As noted by the Chair and members in the relevant committee meeting, LPS acts solely to value and rate these companies once they enter the market. LPS neither holds the information in respect of nor has role in licensing of these operators, which is a matter for the Department for Economy and Ofcom Northern Ireland. Information held by LPS is limited to that information required for rating and valuation, which will be retained in due course once this statutory rule is enacted. It's not really saying much more in the round.
I suppose
you know.
it's just
I think that
maybe
it's
better put than what we
yeah.
were saying.
I think that if there was, I think it would be more closed if the sentence had been, it's a matter for the Department of Economy and Ofcom, which we have verified and rely upon. But
It's a poor
what do we-
choice of wording.
what do we want to
Chair,
do?
the thing about this is it doesn't change DOF's role. It doesn't change LPS's role.
Yeah.
I suppose to sort of sum it up in one sentence, the department doesn't have the remit and the capacity to do everything in terms of the things that have to happen for this to happen. So LPS is being very clear there that they work on values for calculating rates and so on. The information that is collected around the companies and so on is done by other departments in Ofcom, and DOF has to accept that regulation is done by them and the due diligence around the companies is done by them, if that makes any clarity.
Yeah. So sorry, Owen.
Can I just come in, Chair, to suggest a possible way forward? Because I'm conscious that for our purposes, not that it doesn't matter, but for our purposes, it's really neither here nor there who the companies are, because we're just looking after the piece of work that relates to rate collection once they've been licensed. But I think if we do have any concerns about the licensing process and due diligence, it might do no harm for us to approve the SR, but also bring this to the attention of the department or the Committee for the Economy, and ask them if they can have a look at the licensing side of things, because we're not going to be able to hold the Department for the Economy and the relevant agencies accountable for the licensing process. And it just might be a way through to ensure that we cover off our end and that we're not causing unnecessary delay in terms of rate collection or any of those things, which is really important, but that the Economy Committee may wish to take it forward.
Yeah, Jared.
Just an addendum to that, can we also request, I'm loath to kind of give extra reading or work to the committee, but if there's new companies coming on the market, that the Department of Economy or Ofcom do some kind of background check, is that the correct term? Probably not. That we can get a short briefing of who they are, in addition to one suggestion. So if we can request that, I think that would be useful.
Yeah, I think whenever that licensing's coming in the Department of Economy, they would probably get it as a matter of standard practice. But if it's coming through us for rating purposes, I'd ask for that. No, I'd be content. Paul?
I would be content with that course of action if we suspected there was something wrong. But I don't know that we suspect anything is wrong. It's just that there is a gap here in information, and it's simply because, and the reason why that is because Department of Finance don't hold the responsibility or the capacity to do the work that the Department of Economy and indeed Ofcom NI is meant to do. So I don't see anything untoward here, and I'm not nervous about anything. So I suppose we need to seek clarification of what we're actually asking the Committee of Economy to do, because we don't suspect any wrongdoing here.
Thanks, Paul, and I think that's the point. I think that what we're looking for is clarity on the process, just to make sure that we're all clear on the process, the information's going to where it should be, and to get a bit more information so that we're content, you know, as this progresses, but for whenever it comes forward again, we have the full picture of information. Would members be content with that course of action as proposed by Owen, supplemented by Chair?
No, happy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Be content?
Yeah.
Okay, so are members content with the statutory rule?
Yep.
Okay, and so put the question that the Committee for Finance has considered SR 2025/44, the Valuation, Telecommunications, Natural Gas and Water Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025, and has no objection to the rule. Agreed? Thank you. So agenda item 10, this is SR 2025/50, the Government Resource and Accounts Act, Northern Ireland 2001, Estimates and Accounts, Designation of Bodies, Order 2025. I refer members to page 207 of the meeting pack for a clerk's cover note and relevant correspondence from the department. The department has formally laid statutory rule which will amend the Government Resources and Accounts Northern Ireland Act 2001, Estimates and Accounts, Designation of Bodies Order 2025, which designates specified central government bodies in relation to named government departments for the purpose of those departments' supply estimates and resource accounts. This order designates the bodies for inclusion in the departmental estimates and accounts for the year ending 31st of March 2026. The list of bodies is included in the attached order. The proposed rule will be subject to negative resolution procedure before the Assembly, and the end of the statutory period is the 5th of May 2025. It will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025. Members were briefed on the proposed rule by departmental officials at the meeting of the 19th of February and were content with the proposed rule. The department has stated there have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee clerk. However, the DALO subsequently informed the committee team that there was an error with a heading in the SR. The clerk asked the ESR for a view on this before the committee considered its position. The SR has been subsequently amended and a revised version is being circulated in hard copy now. Full details of the proposed rule, consultation and impacts can be found at page 209 of the meeting pack. In our 35th report to the Assembly, the Examiner of Statutory Rules has not drawn this rule to the attention of the Assembly, and this report can be found at page 7 of the tabled pack. Just on this, it's circulated just because it's just landed here. What was it that has changed, just so that we're all content with what it is?
So, Chair, if members just have a look at the headings that are there, it was a heading that had been, usually a typo won't really kind of raise our attention, but it's the fact that an entire heading was changed and it was entirely different words. It was just, it had been a cut and paste error.
Okay.
Amendment to the principal order.
So, yeah. So we can highlight it there.
Yeah. So designation of bodies.
And the one in the pack says
Look at the one
amendments
on
to
the pack.
principal order.
Yeah.
Just through the chair and the clerk. Sir, looking at the actual designated bodies, Part 7, Department of Infrastructure, Northern Ireland Water seems to have either disappeared or not been added.
Is that because they're a GoCo? Maybe they.
Yeah, is
It's
it?
just, it doesn't apply for the purposes of this SR.
Or this for this
Yeah.
purpose SR? No, I just thought it was because everything else seems to be in it, but bearing in mind the interest we're taking in their forensic, looking at their accounts at the moment, just
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the original.
No, so it's
phrase.
yeah. So I've got the pack open and I've the page in my hand. So on the first page of this, the second heading in bold had said amendments to the principal order and has now been changed for the title designation of bodies as it should be. So I'm content with
Oh,
that.
it's okay.
That
So
was,
it was just
that
a-
was the
just a
reason we
query.
raised it, because it was just such a glaringly different heading, but it was a cut and paste error, effectively.
That's fine.
Unfortunately,
No
Put
issue.
it online.
it has been amended online.
Yeah.
So what is out there is now the correct version.
This is the correct version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what's
And
been
that's now out
published,
there.
so it's out there
Okay,
now.
so are members content with the statutory rule? Okay, thank you. And I put the question that the Committee for Finance has considered SR 2025/50, the Government Resources and Accounts Act, Northern Ireland 2001, Estimates and Account, Designation of Bodies Order 2025 and has no objection to the rule. Agreed? Thank you. Okay, so agenda item 11, SR 2025/55, the Public Service Pensions Revaluation Order, Northern Ireland 2025. I refer members to page 222 of the meeting pack for a clerk's cover note and relevant correspondence from the department. The department has formally laid statutory rule which will specify the annual percentage change in the general level of prices or earnings used by career averaged revalued earnings public service pension schemes for the purpose of revaluing active members' pension benefits. This is an annually required order which will specify an increase in prices of 1.7% based on the published annual change in Consumer Prices Index. The specified increase for earnings will be 4.5% based on the published figure for average weekly earnings. Full details and breakdown for each scheme and process for revaluation can be found in the statutory rule and explanatory memorandum provided by the department. The SR is subject to the negative resolution procedure, and the end of the statutory period has been calculated as the 5th of May 2025. It will come into operation on the 1st of April 2025. At its meeting of the 5th of March 2025, the committee agreed that it was content with the proposed statutory rule. The department has stated that there have been no changes to the policy content since that time. Full details of the proposed rule, consultation and impacts can be found at page 224 of the meeting pack. In her 35th report to the Assembly, the Examiner of Statutory Rules has not drawn this rule to the attention of the Assembly. The report can be found at page 7 of the tabled pack. Are members content with the statutory rule? And I put the question that the Committee for Finance has considered SR 2025/55, the Public Service Pensions Revaluation Order, Northern Ireland 2025, and has no objection to the rule. Agreed?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Let's see this over. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 12. This will be our first oral briefing.
Chair, we're very excited that we're so on track with time.
Well, not last.
Okay, so this briefing will be on shared property management, and I refer members to page 233 of the meeting pack for the clerk's cover note, to page 235 from previous ministerial correspondence in relation to the issue, and to page 237 for a briefing paper provided by the department in advance of today's meeting. So I would like to welcome to the meeting Michael Foster, the Head of Civil Law Reform, and Catherine Nixon, Principal Legal Officer on Civil Law Reform. We're delighted to have you, and we're looking forward to this briefing. I'd just like to hand over to you for a few opening remarks.
Sure, thanks. Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep those remarks relatively brief to maximise time for questions. Chair, this has been an issue for a while. As the paper to you noted, it formed part of the work of the Law Commission over a decade ago on apartments. And there's been a previous attempt by the department to grapple with the issue, which took place for around about a year back in 2016, where there was an attempt to develop legislation similar to that currently exists in Scotland, which would have aimed basically to have set out a scheme for registering property managers and a code of conduct. At that time, the office had a policy lawyer with considerable land law experience working on that, but for a number of reasons, principally with the collapse of the political institutions at that time, and also due to disagreement about the scope of the bill, work on that essentially didn't progress any further at that stage. I came into post at the very end of that, but was able to see the depth and complexity of the work that had been carried out to that point. So since the Assembly was back up and running last year, there's been renewed interest in the issue, and we have fielded over a dozen Assembly questions from various MLAs over the course of the last 13 or 14 months on the issue. And the themes, as the paper set out, are fairly generic. The lack of regulation of property management companies, concern over increased service charges, complaints about the level of service, and generally a lack of communication are all ones that have been raised by various members. Nevertheless, given that the previous finance minister considered that this issue therefore was worth exploring again, we were fortunate just before Christmas to secure the release of Catherine here from her substantive post to come over to assist with that work. Catherine is a property lawyer within DSO and has considerable expertise and knowledge on land law. So Catherine has been preparing scoping work on this over the last 3 months or so, and that has involved meeting with a range of interested parties and undertaking additional research on the matter. And it is clear, even from that first 3 months of work, that there are certain problems that tend to arise in relation to shared property management, and the scoping work being undertaken is an attempt to assess those and to set out potential ways in which they might be dealt with. I'd just like briefly, Chair, if I can, to flag here the difference between a property management company, which is the phrase most commonly used by MLAs and other stakeholders, and a property managing agent. So a property management company is usually a company established initially by the developer and controlled by it when the development is being built. There's normally a provision in the lease that when all units have been sold, the developer's interest will be transferred to the management company. The members of the company will usually be the purchasers of the apartments, and on completion of the development, control of the company normally passes to them. So the management company, therefore, is the sort of organisation that will control affairs relating to the apartment. But obviously, in most cases, the residents of the management company, or the residents who form the management company, don't usually want to be burdened with the day-to-day tasks of maintenance and other such issues that are around property management. So what tends to happen is a managing agent is instructed. But unlike the management company, which is a legal interest in the common parts of the development, agents do not have any legal responsibility for the management of the development. They're essentially firms instructed by developers or by the management company to ensure the upkeep and maintenance of the building. Ideally, their responsibilities are set out in a contract with the management company, and they are appointed for a defined term and accountable to the management company. But there is no specific legal regulation for managing agents as opposed to management companies. There's no official registration scheme, there's no licensing scheme, and effectively anyone can set up a business as a managing agent. And it's that particular landscape that we think poses the main problems in the sector. And when people talk about the lack of regulation of property management companies, what we really think is referred to is a lack of regulation of managing agents. And management companies have a certain level of regulation in that they are subject to company law, which is outside the remit of our department. But other than those general obligations, there is no sector-specific requirement in place. So that's certainly one of the issues that the scoping work is focused on. Catherine has met with a number of MLAs. She's considered correspondence from others. She's met with colleagues in the Department for Communities who have an interest in the housing sector, and particularly the interface with social housing. She's also met with experts on the conveyancing side, and we're now at a stage where most of that engagement has taken place, and the job of preparing a report for the Minister's consideration is well underway. Of course, if there are any particular issues which the committee generally or members individually want to feed into our work at this stage, we'd be very happy to hear those. But in terms of the next steps, we aim to have a report to the Minister for his consideration around about Easter time. I'm happy to leave it there, Chair, and attempt answer any questions that you and members have on the issue.
Thank you very much, Michael, and I really appreciate you coming. This has been just a rapidly growing issue as people move more into, this shared property management and a lot of the different schemes, and a lot of people, the issues that they'll be coming to me with, it just really does open the whole issue of what is the regulation, where do we go when we have been wrong. So it's really good that you know, you're doing a lot of work in this space and appreciate the time taken on it. I know that a lot of the issues that come to me are very much whenever properties change in hands and people aren't told that there are fees that other people in the building or other people in the development have paid. But obviously the shared service is the cutting of the grass, the cleaning of the building, so you can't leave one person out because you know they're not paying it, and the inequity of that. So there definitely is very much a need for this, and I would welcome progression in the space. And I just wonder, has the Minister alerted the Executive to the potential for legislation coming forward on this in this mandate?
Not at this stage. I mean, obviously we're in a very compressed mandate, and as you'll know, Chair, from our previous engagement with the committee, we have a very busy workload across a range of different areas, with the Marriage and Civil Partnership Bill, which is at an advanced stage of drafting. We've commenced work on no-fault divorce and a range of other areas. So it's difficult to give a commitment. I mean, this is a very, very complex area, and when we present the report to the Minister shortly, we will obviously be speaking with those who are involved in this about how we can resource a bill on this, and those are questions which we'll hope to have clear answers on over the next few weeks.
Thank you. And it just brings back, you know, the same issue as we do keep raising around, you know, the civil law piece, although this one does feel that you can see the link to the finance more in terms of it's costing people money and you know, just the difficulties in people with terms of their property. But I'll bring in members. Jerry, Carol?
Yes, Michael, just go back to basics. Just clarity for my sake on the difference between the property management firms and the agencies. The firms are people who tend to buy their own homes, but they run the run the sort of building collectively, and the agency is the outside firms who do the the maintenance work. Or just clarify that for me.
Yeah, I mean, Catherine can jump in here at any time if I get anything wrong here, Catherine. But the distinction I think to be made is the property management company. That tends to be the developer will set that up, and then slowly but surely all of those units that are being sold. So if you buy a unit in an apartment, you'll become part of the property management company. If another member does the same, they become a member of the management company. All of the units are then sold, and in most cases the developer will then extinguish his role, and that will then move to an external property management agent who will come in and take control of the maintenance, the upkeep, all of that sort of stuff. But they're a very distinct legal body from the property management company. The property management company can be a slightly misleading term in some ways, because it's effectively everybody who owns a share in the apartment block. But they rarely, I mean, Catherine, again, if you want to jump in here.
Sure. There's really two things going on. One is the ownership of the common areas, and the other one is the management of those common areas, how they're maintained. So the ownership of the common areas, it passes to a management company, and then everybody who owns, say, an apartment block, everybody in the apartment block has a share in that management company. So if you can work that through, that means that if you have a share in the management company and the management company owns those common parts, you're an owner of them, you're part owner with everybody else who's in that block. So that's the ownership point. Then when it comes to the actual maintenance, that's dealt with by the property managing agents. So that's the people who'll sort out the insurance, maybe work out when it's painted, who comes in to change the light bulbs and does the health and safety checks around the place, mows the grass, puts the plants out, all those things. And they will cover all that. Then the cost of that they charge back through the service charge. So that's the way that it would work, Jerry.
And I've got just to get that clarity, I've got a development in my own constituency where there's a bit of confusion on who's responsible for the sewage, whether it's the developer and the agency or the company. So I can maybe get in touch about that issue. And in terms of the legislation and regulation, obviously there's no regulation of the agencies at all. I think, Michael, you said. Is this all under the remit of finance, or is there sort of a cross-cutting element of communities as well?
So, in terms of what we would traditionally seem or think as private property, it would fall for the Department of Finance. If there's any overlap into the social housing sector, where it touches upon, for example, an apartment block that contains housing association or units, or if broader still, if it was housing executive, then clearly the Department for Communities would be interested. But I think the scope of our work, certainly at this stage, we're looking at that interface with private landowners as opposed to social housing.
It's a final question from me. So, is there any idea of the average payment to property management firms or agencies, whatever is the correct one, in terms of people, if they, the maintenance fees and stuff like that? Because we hear, I certainly hear, I'm sure that MLAs do, of hikes and exorbitant fees for maintenance issues quite often out of the blue. So is there any assessment of what people are on average paying for maintenance works? And
That's very difficult to say. There isn't, basically because every development is different. You might have a very 5-star development that would have very high maintenance charges which will filter into the service charge, and you might have something where it's only a small portion of grass at the front of a development of houses, and that should be much less. So it's difficult to say. The emerging themes in the work that I've done in other jurisdictions is that they tend to go on the basis of what is reasonable, and that seems to be a marker that you can apply right across the board, whether it's a very expensive property or one that is more in the affordable bracket. So that would be what I would say, but at the minute there's none.
Sorry, George, very quickly. Catherine, see if anybody wants to challenge sort of maintenance fees. I mean, obviously the law is limited. Is there any avenue where people can challenge? Does it have to be privately through a solicitor, or is there any other body that they can challenge maintenance fees if they feel that they're unfair?
There's nobody really at the moment that can do that. I suppose that's the difficulty that a lot of people find themselves in then.
Thank you.
Owen Tennyson.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Michael and Catherine, for your evidence so far. This is an issue that I come across. I actually attended a meeting of a management company with a constituent, and to be honest was really aghast at the way it was operating, whereby there was no clear delineation at all between the role of the agent and the role of the management company. So I witnessed, for example, a conversation that was happening around the value for money that the agent was offering and the quality of service, but the agent was party to those discussions and really almost acting as the chair of the management company. So I guess my question is, what can we do to ensure that those kind of conflicts of interest are managed? I mean, if you were going to any other company and the board of the company was meeting, they wouldn't have their contractors at every meeting of the board. But I saw that agent was acting effectively as the secretariat. He was putting out the notification of the meeting, he was chairing the meeting, and he was acting as though it was his management company, and he was instructing the residents in terms of what they had to do. So is there anything that we can do to make that clear delineation between the role of the agent and the role of the company, I guess is my question.
For some developments, people are happy that is the way that it works. If you have a very efficient managing agent and they're sending out the notices and they're putting out the agenda for the AGM and it's all working well, people are grateful for that, because again, a lot of people want to live in these types of properties because it takes a lot of the stress, it should take a lot of the stress out of property ownership. I suppose the difficulty comes is if your property agent is not carrying out all of those responsibilities in a way that you as a property owner is comfortable with or thinks is going well. And again, that is something that I'm looking at the moment. There probably isn't any way around it, other than if all the people in the development come together and want to appoint a different agent. But people are nervous about doing that because they then think we might not get anything better, or if I want to sell it and there's a problem with that, that will cause me difficulties further on. So that's more of a piece. It's a 2-level piece, really, I would say. One, an education piece for people who are buying properties in a development, that they understand what's going to happen, what their role will be as a shareholder in a management company. And the second piece really about maybe providing certain standards for the way in which property agents carry out their business.
Is there anywhere where those residents who sort of unwittingly become members of this management company can seek advice? Because I'm conscious that a lot of the agents are acting as agents for a multitude of management companies and become experts in some of the sort of legal and financial complexities of the whole arrangement. And you have residents who are just lay people who don't understand the structures and how they work. Is there anywhere where residents can go where there is an issue to seek independent advice or support in terms of making changes, to appoint a different agent or go looking for other potential agents?
There's no particular arbiter for something like that. I do think most people, when they do purchase properties, will be aware that there is this element of a management company. And certainly across the piece, when speaking to conveyancers, they were very keen to say that when somebody comes into their office to buy say an apartment, they make sure they say, this is going to be involved being part of a management company, and we would recommend that you get involved in that. So that would be the way that it would. But that's part of it. It's setting a bar that people can then work with, I suppose.
And just one final question is what is the nature of the market for agents? I mean, is there a lot of competition? Are there a lot of different companies sort of providing this sort of agent support, or is it quite monolithic? Do we know if it's a small number of providers offering these services? Because I'm just conscious it's often the case that the agent is appointed by the developer and the residents don't then have any role in sort of appointing or reappointing anyone then from then on.
Well, the situation is it's difficult to say how many are working in that area because there is no registration. So it's difficult to provide any form of head count for it. It's just all anecdotally. Certain areas you will find exactly the situation going on as you've suggested.
Thank you.
Alfred?
Yeah, thank you. Michael, I was interested in an answer to Jerry's question around housing associations and even housing executive. In Scotland, they talk about property factors, which includes the person who maintains and also the local authority in GB's case and associations. Why would you not include housing executive and housing associations in an Northern Ireland context with regards to any sort of regulation, considering that a lot of the issues that we would face as MLAs can come just as easily from a block of flats that's owned and maintained by the housing executive and or a housing association, like communal areas?
So this was part of the reason why the initial work on this really hit the buffers, was one of the reasons. The Department for Communities did indicate to us that that the work that had been undertaken previously had not properly taken into account the huge burden that it could potentially place upon, in particular, housing executive, which I can't remember the figures now off the top of my head, but it was responsible for the management of several 100,000 properties at the time. And for them to fall into this type of statutory scheme when they already have a system in place in terms of how they regulate. There is legislation in the social housing space in terms of this issue, but there's not in relation to private managing agents in the private sector. So the argument I think that is likely to be made on that point is that the social housing sector is distinct from some of the problems that managing agents have in relation to private property developments. And I take your point entirely that the Scottish Act did include those. But we would, I think, if we were trying to develop legislation that would bring in the social housing sector, then there would be very much that cross-departmental work that would need to be undertaken to do that. And we haven't really received, certainly within the department, any of the same level of concerns around housing executive housing association run properties as we have in relation to the situation that we've described earlier in relation to managing agents in the private sector. So therefore our focus, I think, partly because we're a very small team, has to focus in on that particular issue.
When you say about the burden that would be put on the housing executive with so many housing, what that could they be construed as is that they don't want to live up to the responsibilities of maintaining their properties properly?
I don't think that is, in fairness, the case. I think that they argue, or the argument would be made, and I'm not trying to preempt what those arguments are, but it would be not hard to see the argument put forward that there already is that level of regulation within the social housing sector, that why would they also need a duplicate level of regulation?
I know that it's not it's in a different department that sits, so it won't be your purview or your expertise, but there have been cases in my constituency whereby property owners have received a bill from Housing Executive for communal works with regards to painting and fixing of handrails around staircases, outside work around soffits. That to me seemed really over the top with regards to pricing, but those property owners were forced to pay because they lived within that communal unit, and they hadn't really any real recourse of other than review, a judicial review or a case, and then that's not really where you'd want to be or go. I would see that there would be and nothing's impossible in legislation, so it could be the case that you could encapsulate all of those bodies into one piece of legislation but have different tiers of standard.
It's a valid point.
One of the issues in Scotland is, or one of the aspects of the Scottish legislation is the Code of Conduct. Would you perceive that in the absence of legislation that you could still produce a Code of Conduct whereby private owners in a private setting could look towards something as a best case or best practice? Or
the development of a code of conduct in itself, I think, would be relative. Well, I'm using this term in the context of compared to bringing forward a bill, all bells and whistles. The development of a code of conduct in isolation probably would be relatively straightforward. It would be a question of how that was policed and how it was implemented in the absence of primary legislation, and whether it could be enforced or whether it would be abided to. What one might tend to find is, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that the majority of property management agents in this jurisdiction do their job well, do a high professional standard and do it properly. Those are the types of property management agents who probably would sign up to a code of conduct and probably would adhere to that code of conduct. I think where the difficulties lie in this jurisdiction are there are perhaps a small number of managing agents who maybe aren't quite as thorough with their work, shall we say. And
there are cases, I'll name one of them, the electrical installation regulations. And I think when I was in the trade it was the 16th or 17th edition. It's probably up to 20 or 21st edition now, but they're non-statutory. So they are basically just guidance. But of course then there's a weight behind them. So something like that could be done in this field without the actual legislation. And I suppose if you're not going to commit to a legislative piece in this term, what is the point of the scoping exercise and bringing Catherine across? What's the outcome?
well, I mean, the outcome will be a matter for the Minister to decide once he receives the paper within the next number of weeks. I don't want to second guess that, but I mean, this is an area which I think most people would want to see progress on, and we'll have to have those discussions in terms of how we develop a funded bill team to take a legislative piece forward. And I can't at this stage commit or give any indication as to whether that will happen soon or...
So to be clear, we're not, and I'm not asking you to give a commitment that you'll have a time frame, but do you see at the end of this scoping exercise that the recommendation would be that at some point in the future we will have to legislate?
Yes.
That's basically, so it's coming down the line. Okay.
It's also important to
Sorry,
say that in Scotland and also in the Republic of Ireland, the codes of conduct have not been brought in isolation. They go hand in glove with registration, and to practice in these areas without being registered is an offence. So it's difficult to provide an answer of how you would bring in a code of conduct completely in a vacuum.
Right, okay, without that
They go hand in
registration.
glove, really.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I just wanted to ask, finally, have you done any work in terms of the crossover with the shared property management where payments are being made to developers and the level of unadopted developments that there are? So I would have a number of issues across the constituency where we've unadopted developments, with issues with that. whereas there's just sort of a degree of some of these houses are paying the developer for the services like, you know, the cutting of the shared grass, but the site in its entirety hasn't been completed, so the roads haven't been adopted, the bins aren't being collected. I was wondering, have you done any work in that space?
What we would say is that the issue of adoption sits outside the realm of our scoping, because that's a completely different matter, and when things go forward, ideally those should be adopted and built, rendered to an adopted standard, so that it's really outside the scope of what we're doing.
Yeah,
It's also not, as I understand it, for the Department of Finance. That's an infrastructure issue.
It's just that little bit of a grey area again, where, you know, we're saying that there's no rules or regulations in and around this you know, type of property management, but where you have a particular development where some people are in their homes, they're paying towards it, but actually the site isn't complete, the roads aren't adopted, and the bins aren't being collected. There's, you know, there's a difficult space for constituents of ours who, you know, where do they go with this? And I understand that the unadopted sites doesn't fall with you, but I wonder, is it something whenever, you know, we're looking into the property management piece, should it be a prerequisite that the development's complete and adopted before developers are able to charge fees on those that are within them for maintenance? So just a thought on a few things coming through in my area, but if no one else has indicated, we're content, but we're really keen to stay up to date with this. And you'd said the paper's going to the Minister before Easter, and we have the Minister here in committee in May, so hopefully it'll maybe be something that we can hear from him directly on. But thank you very much for briefing us. It's really interesting, and really, really appreciate your work on this, so thank you very much. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Last week for
It's one that a lot of members are going to get. A lot of constituency issues around. It's certainly with the growth of the big developments.
Thank you, members, and I think that's one that we'd be keen to follow up on, as you know, just the level and complexity of those in terms of constituency issues. I'm sure we all have a wide range of them. As we move on to the next agenda, pardon?
Chair, I didn't really want to check. It's just moved for the other members. I think it was something that was maybe Owen brought up. Why are we? They're going through an awful lot of effort if they're not bringing through legislation.
Well, they said that the outcome will be
Just maybe not this mandate, I think was the inference. Yeah.
You know,
so we can ask the Minister.
Chair, they've been very keen to give the committee long view.
Yeah, that's very.
Members will recall we've had officials up a number of times, and we know the marriage bill will come from civil law reform, and we have heard some word around potentially a divorce bill. I think the officials have been really good at giving us a long sight in, but as they've stated on a number of occasions, it's getting that capacity and bringing in the right sort of specific knowledge to get things put into legislation. I suppose it's reflective, Chair, of something that's happened across a lot of the departments, where capacities that existed previously to bring forward legislation aren't there anymore. You don't have legislative units anymore, so in a lot of cases it's bringing new people together at any given time over any given subject area to create legislation, which has slowed the process down somewhat.
Yeah. No. Okay, thank you very much. So we move on to item 13 on our agenda, which was due to be our budget 25-26 briefing, and as outlined at the start, the officials from the Department of Finance aren't able to be here. They're supporting the Minister in the response to the spring statement just now. So I would ask that I can seek members' agreement to reschedule this briefing.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. And the clerk had suggested that we perhaps ask for this in terms of Monday, Tuesday, given that this is us facing into the budget. There is the spring statement, and we would expect to see a lot of movement on this. And next Wednesday, we're due to be at our on-site visit in Kilkeel, which is not televised. So would members be in agreement that the clerk looks into whether there's possibility on Monday or Tuesday for a briefing?
Yeah. Through the chair, we're not exactly overburdened with anything else going on in the Assembly on Monday
We're
and Tuesday.
probably looking at Tuesday, because we have the Swiss qualifications SR scheduled for debate early on Monday, and that'll tie up the Minister. And then there is no natural break on Monday, so we probably will look at Tuesday, probably lunchtime. A lot of this will depend on getting a room. Officials have some level of availability. Have we got?
We can. There's availability for Tuesday morning. It looks like it.
Okay, potentially that's pushing into the morning if members are agreeable. It means we can at least miss party meetings.
Yeah.
We won't clash with that. Looking at Tuesday morning, we have initially members' statements until 11. Then there's some private members' business. There's 2 motions there around private members' business before lunch. So potentially, if members are willing, we look at Tuesday morning. I know we have officials availability.
The only thing about Tuesday morning, if there's going to be a ministerial statement, I think there might be 1 or 2 next week. I've just sensed there might be. They'll probably be on Tuesday morning. Tuesday lunchtime, 1 o'clock.
Tuesday lunchtime or
Tuesday
Tuesday,
lunchtime,
I can do Tuesday before business.
Yeah.
But
We'll look at what we have in terms of room availability,
yeah.
and we'll come back on that, but probably we're looking more at Tuesday. Okay, we'll come back to members on that, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So we obviously have a number of papers in the pack in relation to the budget, linked to that briefing. Does any members have any comments they want to raise now in terms of any of the papers in the pack, or happy to wait for the briefing? Okay. Thank you. So moving to the tabled pack, we have the draft executive budget 25-26 motion and report. I refer members to page 20 of the tabled pack, and there's a short compilation report prepared to reflect the committee's approach towards the scrutiny of the draft executive budget for 25-26. Members will appreciate that there's limited time to debate this report before Easter recess. Therefore, it is tabled for possible agreement at today's meeting. The intention would be for the agreed and signed motion to be laid in the business office today, and for the business committee to schedule the debate. The format of the report and the motion will follow those of the last round robin exercise of this kind undertaken by the committee's predecessor in 2022. Members want to take a few moments to look at the pack, just page 20 in the tabled pack.
Chair, if it's helpful, we've literally just taken the model from 2022, including the motion, which references both our own compilation, which is a short report. I should stress that there is, as I say, very similar to the 2022 model. The motion also reflects the fact that the Fiscal Council has published its assessment of the draft executive budget. Again, same as the 2022 motion. That's, if you like, the research piece that we would normally seek for a debate. That's already out there, it's already published, and members can access that across the board then as well.
So members, it's normal practice for consideration of a draft report other than a bill to be carried out in closed meeting. Can I seek members' agreement to move into closed session to consider this item of business? Yep, thank you.
Chair.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
Okay, thank you. And we note that the fourth report of the Finance Committee has been agreed and will be reflected in the minutes of the proceedings. So we move to agenda item 14, that is building regulations, the T&F Group update on the departmental fit. We have an oral briefing from the departmental officials. Are they there?
Do we have officials okay, Heather, yet? We are, we've moved quite early. We may need to
We
drop
can
back in
ju-
item.
we can jump ahead, or we can go to item
They're
15.
not here.
They're not there? Okay, yeah,
No.
sure.
Oh,
Hey!
very impressed. Billy was there, wasn't
I need to make sure I have Billy on Zoom.
Hi. Thank you. I refer members to page 390 of the meeting pack for clerk's cover note and page 393 for a briefing paper provided by the department. And I want to welcome to the meeting Sharon Smith, the Deputy Secretary of the Construction and Procurement and Delivery, John Burke, the Deputy Director, Building Standards Branch, Properties Division, CPD, Damien Farley, Senior Professional and Technical Officer, Building Standards Branch, Properties Division, CPD, and we have joining via Zoom Billy Black, Principal Professional and Technical Officer, Building Standards Branch, Properties Division, CPD. Thank you all very much for joining us here today. We're really pleased to be getting this briefing, and thanks for being there good and early, because we're running in good time today. So I'd invite you to make some opening remarks, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to committee members for inviting us to brief you on the work of the department on fire safety aspects of the building regs and the work of the cross-departmental team established to review the best fit for building regulations. You've already done the introductions, Chair, so I'll not go over them again. So the paper provided at your meeting for the 12th of March on the building regulations outlines the specific recommendations from the Grenfell Phase 1 and Phase 2 inquiry reports, as well as those of the local expert panel. It also takes account of the UK government response and statement issued on the 26th of February 2025. You'll see from the paper that the recommendations are broadly categorised in terms of building regulation teams' roles on direct, peripheral, and where they don't have any role. And just to remind you of what they actually relate to, the direct is implying that it is a technical matter where Building Standards Branch is directly responsible, for example, amending the relevant regulations or legislation and or guidance on the technical matters. If it's mentioned that it's peripheral, this includes recommendations where building regulations would have a more limited input, for example, on reserved or procedural matters, or where the recommendation applies to all buildings, but the building's regulations could influence only the relevant building work when it's taking place. And then where it says that it has no relevance, then it implies the matter is not germane to building regulations, for example, where the fire service or civil contingency matter is involved. So the building regulation team's immediate and principal role lies in the updating of technical requirements of our regulations and supporting technical guidance, which can be complex and requires careful consideration and consultation. Much of this takes place in light of the developments in England's amendments to its regulations and guidance, and this allows us to learn from the research and developments elsewhere prior to implementation here. Colleagues here today appeared before the committee last July, and that was prior to making a statutory rule to amend fire safety aspects of building regulations. This statutory rule was put in place in November 2024, and it comes into operation on the 6th of May 2025. The team has been undertaking awareness-raising events with that uplift in mind, and is also now working to take forward further measures in its next phase in what is a continually developing regulatory environment. John and his team will be happy to take any questions on the work of the team, but before we open for questions, just a brief update on the cross-departmental task and finish group, which was established to review the best departmental fit for building regulations and standards, policy and legislation function. So the cross-departmental task and finish group was set up in May 2024. It comprised of officials from the Department for Communities, Department for Economy, Health and Safety Executive, Department for Infrastructure and our own department. So I chaired the cross-departmental group and coordinated the evidence gathering exercise and development of the recommendations. The work was completed in December 2024 with a paper issued to permanent secretaries on the 7th of January 2025. This was followed by a meeting with permanent secretaries on the 6th of February to agree the next steps. Submissions with the recommendations were issued to respective ministers on the 17th of February 2025. Ministers for Economy, Communities and Finance have accepted the recommendations, and the Minister for Infrastructure has noted the recommendations. Minister O'Dowd has now written to Minister Lyons to formalise this agreement and to confirm that officials will work closely together to progress the recommendations, and the list of recommendations were provided in the letter that we provided on the 12th of March. So I'll stop there, Chair, and invite any questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just sorry, before we move on, can we just check to see if Billy can hear us?
Is Billy frozen, or is he?
I think he might be frozen. He looks like he's frozen.
Like, wave if you can hear us.
Don't think he can hear us. Chair, might that cause an issue?
It shouldn't cause an issue, no.
You okay?
We should be fine.
Should be able to manage.
Yeah,
When we try and get it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sharon, and particularly welcome, the strong progress of the cross-departmental task and finish group. It is so important to work across all of the departments whenever they're involved, and it's something, you know, that comes through in a lot of recommendations and a lot of these different pieces of work. In terms of the output to that there and the agreement then with the two ministers, that's very, very welcome. But I just want to ask if you could confirm who's ultimately responsible for ensuring that the recommendations coming through in the working paper are overseen and implemented, or is that now passed on to the level of ministerial agreement?
So Minister O'Dowd has written to Minister Lyons to confirm that the recommendations have been accepted by those, mostly by DFC and DOF, because we have building regulations and we're transferring it to the Department for Communities. The other departments have noted it, so it will now, Chair, be between the Department for Communities and the Department of Finance. But I must say all the perm sects involved, and I think that's why we were able to take it through as quickly as we did. There was a really strong leadership to move this forward, particularly because it relates to building safety. So between Department of Finance, Department of Communities, both ministers will have oversight of that work progressing. Now you will see from the recommendations that we've given ourselves a 3-year window, and I think that's important because it was a responsible handing over. It wasn't a case of this is now yours, you know. So we have a commitment in the Department of Finance to fully resource the team. And that is with a number of specialisms, and as you will appreciate through all the committees, the capacity and capability and the skills shortage makes it more difficult, more time consuming to get the right people in the right posts. There may be learning curves, so our commitment in the Department of Finance is that we will have a fully resourced team to hand over to the Department for Communities. So we've given ourselves a 3-year window to do that, and also the transfer of functions order. So, but we have full commitment, which I think is a really positive sign, and we are committed to working towards those recommendations.
No, that's great, and I think, as you say, it's the issue of fire safety. You know, it's people's lives. Everyone's taking it really seriously, and it's good to see that level of commitment. I think that's what, you know, inspires confidence in the public, that we're showing this proactive engagement. When you're talking about the transfer of functions and the 3-year time frame there, could you detail any of the financial implications for that transfer of functions?
So there is a commitment. I think the resourcing, I have it here, the funding, if I can have it, yes. We're looking at by 2027-28 there will be 2.6 million to fully resource the team. Now we obviously will be resourcing the team incrementally. So at the minute we have 14 members of staff. We're looking to build that up to 35 members of staff. So that will take time, and obviously that budget will be so the first year 25-26 the total cost of the team will be 1.6 million, 26-27 2.26 million, and 27-28 2.6 million.
Is that new cost, or is that a transfer of cost?
There's 14 members of staff at the minute, so those 14 members of staff will already be staff within Department of Finance included in our baseline, Chair, but we will be bidding for extra funds to fully resource that team.
And then so is that a Department of Finance bid for them for the meantime, and then with a view that it'll transfer to communities? Yeah. Correct. No, absolutely. And I just wanted to ask as well about, you talked about the capacity and the capability, like it's a very specific skill set here that we're talking about. You know, how confident are you that you're going to be able to get these people with the skill set that you need here?
We've had some success recently. We carried out a recruitment. I think we got an extra.
We got three
members of
staff. 3 members of staff from that to fill existing vacant posts.
External recruitments.
So 1 was an internal promotion and 2 were external to fill that. So there will be a recruitment then required for the promotion in consequence. But yeah, we had a reasonable response. I mean, the timeline gives us some effort there, so there'll obviously have to be flexibility in that, and we'll run the schemes and we'll see what we can draw from the list. It is challenging. The ideal would be that you were able to recruit in that way, because that allows you to build up a team and a knowledge base which is always going to be very valuable to the civil service. If you have spare capacity, I suppose you would have to then start to look at other options. Do you go to consultants or whatever? But none of those options are as good for the long-term investment and giving you a stable team to be able to manage things as it progresses. And the expectation is that kind of if you could build the team up, then you would catch up on all the parts where there is deficit, and that's not just in fire safety, of course, but that would bring as you do that over time, at the end of that position, you will then have resource that you can either use elsewhere in the civil service, or the natural wastage that might have occurred over that time can start to build the team back to its core of perhaps around 22 staff or something rather than 35, but it was a kind of surge plan, I suppose. And we'll just have to see how that recruitment goes. We'll just have to be flexible about it and see how best we can manage it. I would say that the posts are generally seen as, we're quite good with our flexible working and things like that, so that has been attractive to the staff and to the applications that we have received. And working with our HR colleagues and that and promoting that has been quite helpful.
Yeah. No, and I think as well, given that you've 14 existing staff that know the business and are able to transfer with it, it's a really solid base for that. And bringing members in, Paul Frey.
Yeah, thank you. So you said you're going to build up a team from 14 to 35 staff, but you said there was 3 vacancies which you've...
There were 3 vacancies that have been filled.
So that brings you up to the 14?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Trying to get up to 35 staff within the 3-year period. What type of expertise are you needing for that team?
So we have a mixture, but principally technical posts with expertise, ideally in the relevant parts. Usually what has happened is we've recruited technical people with a particular background or interest, and what we have found is that they can be directed quite successfully to the relevant parts where work needs to be done. But yes, you're looking for architects, structural engineers, mechanical, electrical engineers. The posts tend to be open to all of those people. That would be the core. You would also have a little bit of work to do. I can't quite recall just how many, but maybe 3 or 4 of those posts might be to help boost the legislative team. And because there'll be more legislative work to do, and there'll be that bit more engagement, of course, with DFC on their building safety work and that as well. So there'll be that side of it, that kind of policy side of it as well. So those construction experts are the challenge. And
remuneration, I take it there's a band payment scale that competes with the private sector?
So we think that is the case. Most of the posts that we're looking at, the majority are at SPTO, that's equivalent to deputy principal scale. Deputy principals in the civil service generally lead on the policy development in a particular aspect. The next level up, look at the programme. So that's what we need. We need people who are lead writers, who can write the technical guidance, or who can develop the technical guidance in consultation with the rest of their team and with society and with the Building Regulations Advisory Committee and with consultations. And that brings the whole thing forward. But they're always working from a platform of the other administrations and what's there. So you've got a reasonable starting point to come at it. It's not quite the full academic research, perhaps, that might be very leading and cutting edge. You have a solid platform or a solid basis that you're investigating, and you're trying to iron out some of the implications or readjust it to the local circumstances.
When does the 3 years start and finish? Have you a target date?
For 3 years, we've now got ministerial approval for that, and the last formal ministerial response was last week. So Minister wrote yesterday, so our clock really has started, but we were already starting the recruitment. Yes. So we will continue to do that. We're hoping, let's be optimistic, we might be able to bring it within the 3 years. It would be really lovely to do it before the end of this mandate in 2027, but we have to do it responsibly, we have to do it carefully, and we understand there is competing skills in the construction sector and in the project delivery, so it's never a good time, but this is our chance.
Was the 3 years required simply to build up the team? No other reason, just to build up the team of expertise?
Yes, I would say so, and also to bed that in. It's really helpful, having come through the system and delivered a couple of uplifts now. It's really helpful when you've gone through one process and scrutinised that and seen how that's going. That helps build momentum to the next. So there is a period of when people are recruited, of bedding in, of getting to grips with the particular details and going through the policy development steps and stages. Most of the technical people we have might be building control enforcers in district councils, might have come from that background, or might have come from the project background where there's not there. They're trying to learn and engage on the policy development, and on the legislative detail can be quite carefully scrutinised.
So once you have the 35 staff in place, no matter whether that be 2.5 years or 3 years time, is that basically then just a mass transfer of expertise from your department to Department of Communities?
Well, it's the transfer of functions order as well will take a bit of time. Now, we did start some work on this on the previous mandate, but there are technical parts of built-in regs to do with energy performance certificates that we have to just work through what will be transferring. But what I will say, and to give the assurance to the committee, is that the programme of work in terms of the next phase of fire regulations will still continue. So it's not a case that everybody's going to be working on recruiting and getting a team. We'll have a programme of work to deliver as well. So we're realistic about how long these things. So to take somebody off the work that we're doing now solely to focus on the transfer of function orders to get it done quicker may be detrimental to the programme of work that we're doing. So we are trying to do it responsibly and very coordinated, and we also have to work closely with the Department for Communities, who have their own residential safety division, who they're building up as well. So we do see it as a positive step forward. We've got a time scale, we've got ministerial commitment, and we've got definitely the leadership there that we need to deliver this over the 3 years.
Just I'm thinking about the future proofing of any recruitment from the private sector into the public sector, that there would be a longevity there carrying on after the 3 years.
That's what we're looking for, is actually to future-proof it, so we have a sustainable team that we can transfer over to DFC, and hopefully that will dovetail into the work that they're doing on the residential high-rise safety work themselves. So we do think, if ever the stars are aligned, it is now, and we're hoping that will give us a future sustainable business or built-in safety going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And no other members have indicated, but thank you very much. I think we previously we had a briefing there in terms of civil law, and then there's this in the building regulations. It just shows the breadth of the Department of Finance and everything that falls within it. So we really appreciate you coming and your expertise in this field and in the work you're doing. So we would be keen just to stay in touch with this and how this is going, and I'm sure through the clerk team we'll like to keep in touch with how you're progressing on this. But thank you very much to you all for coming today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
We're really cooking with gas now. Yeah, he's coming back. He's just about 15 minutes.
Okay. Oh, super. Okay, members. So our next agenda item, we didn't drop one out there.
No, we haven't. No. We're good. We're
okay.
just under the offer.
Yeah. Okay. Super.
I wonder does Billy know that he can?
Is he still there? Is he?
They opened his microphone, but we're just going to check to make sure we can, because I think we can.
Stephen's just
we can
asked to
take
get
Billy
out of the call.
Yeah, we can do that.
I would hate for him to be stuck in some sort of limbo of
matrix.
this finance committee.
He might actually be there and just gone.
There he goes. If it's right for him, he is gone.
Yeah.
He is gone.
Okay, thank you. So agenda item 15 is our outturn and forecast outturn February written briefing from the departmental officials. And again, if the officials had been here, I think we would have asked questions on it, but we'll run through it because it was a written briefing and we do have the information. So I refer members to page 423 of the meeting pack for a departmental briefing paper on the outturn and forecast outturn data for February. And as usual, the department has reported on the 4 expenditure categories: non-ring-fenced resource DEL, ring-fenced resource DEL, capital DEL and ring-fenced FTC. And there are notable changes since January OFO, including a reduction of NRF resource departmental overcommitments to 21.2 million, a reduction of capital departmental overcommitments to 2.2 million, a small forecasted overspend of 0.4 million in the February OFO return, an underspend of 263 million in February OFO for ring-fenced RDEL, underspend in capital for DOJ, DFC and FSA, and the explanations for departmental variances between February and January are at page 464 of the meeting pack. And in relation to that, I'll invite members with comments, but I just wanted to make a couple of initial comments myself. Just going through from the annexes, which again we are grateful to get from the department because it does set the numbers in context. Just at the start of the meeting, Steve Aiken had referred to it, the Department for Infrastructure in this return on their potential February 2025 outturn. The Department for Infrastructure have shown that they've reduced all their over commitments and were in for coming in on forecast. There was no indication of anything. There was the items in January were reduced. It was noted as storm AO and pressures, and they were looking to come in on target. So now, a few days out from the end of the financial year for Northern Ireland Water Board to be instructing an overspend in the region of £3 million, and for the Minister to be bringing in forensic accountants is really concerning and clearly has not been reported through the Department of Finance budget means. So I think we had agreed in action to write on that. So I just think it's important that there's no evidence of this coming through central finance, so it has come quite unexpectedly. And also my second point on it is the Department for the Economy. There's quite a lot of movement between January and February. If we go down from page, like there's, compared to others from Annex F, so we're starting on page 464 right through, lots of movements and reprofiling from January to February returns. But given in light of the fact that they've just had released that they've had disclaimed accounts for 23-24 and the opening balances of 24-25, for which this financial year is reporting on, are under serious question. I have a lot of concern about a lot of movements and things going on within this particular reporting. And for us here, in the Finance Committee, we're obviously waiting for PAC, which I also sit on, to finish review of that. But in terms of the Finance Committee, the Department of Finance's position, I wonder, can we express something at this point, perhaps even corresponds with the Department of the Economy? Steve Aiken.
Yes, please. And thank you very much indeed, Chair, for bringing up those two issues, because those are the two issues I was going to bring up. First one on the Department of Infrastructure. It seems to me in a budget the size of the Department of Infrastructure's a 3 million variance is being treated with so much degree of concern that they're bringing in forensic accountants, which I think for anybody who's been in the sort of business community or has been a chief executive, that it's raising quite a lot of alarm bells. And within the sort of the context of it and not being flagged up beforehand, if you actually read the Northern Ireland Waters board minutes all the way through, every time board minutes it said we're under significant pressure, we're not going to be able to make it, we're going to, and it just reads of we're going to have overspend. So it suddenly come as a surprise at the last minute just seems to be that's of concern. The one about particularly the Department of Economy that bothers me, because we had regular reports from the Department of Finance, and we ad nauseum we talked about how they looked at the student loan book and how that was being looked at. So it was very clearly that particular part of it was reported to the Department of Finance, and the Department of Finance were aware of that situation. I find it quite difficult to understand why the other areas weren't being raised, and I don't want to touch on where the PAC is going to as well. But looking, as the chair has raised it quite considerably, anybody who looks at how the monies are being pushed around within the Department of Economy, it just seems to be that they've moved it around. It's like whack-a-mole, trying to make sort of the figures as they come through. And I think it is important for the Department of Finance to be taking a view on that, because it's not so long ago that the Department of Economy was heavily involved in creating accounting, or its predecessor on RHI. There seems to be a culture within that department, and I think that's worrying and of concern, and should be a matter for this committee and all MLAs, because it's one thing to say that we know public monies are tight and we're looking at scrutinies how monies are being spent, but there is a definite and I have to be careful with the words here, because we can, it may be a whole lot of reasons, but for management of public monies to be in a situation where accounts are being disclaimed and nobody's been either hauled over the coals, there's been no disciplinary action, and there's been no plan to sort it out, I think is very disturbing. and then to discover that somebody else is getting forensic accountants in, there's definitely a theme that's running here, and I think it's an area we should be taking a great concern over.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And it wasn't the last meeting, it was the one before. You know, I had brought the point that I think that it would be important for us as a committee to sit down with finance directors across the board to understand the capacity, rotation, and their feeling for how that's operating across the public sector. In the Public Accounts Committee last Thursday in public session on the record, the Department for Economy said they have 80 accountants within his departmental structures. So that is a lot of accountants. Just when asked in terms of how they've arrived at this point, and capacities and capabilities. So again, just to continue on this point as to what the role here of us for Finance Committee is, it's on how different departments are obviously reporting their finances and what's going on.
They've got 80 accountants.
80 accountants is what they told Public Accounts Committee
All
last
five?
Thursday. Yes.
All full, all the sort of
I have
chartered status and all the rest of it?
Well, I went back and asked for different grades of that. I've asked for it in different departments just in terms of question pieces, but 80 accountants is what they told Public Accounts Committee last Thursday that they have within the Department for the Economy. So I think that just the finances and the staff in finance, it's across the board in the civil service, the structures, the rotations of that is something that we as this committee are well placed to look at, because as you say, if there's been previous issues within that department, have those people all been sitting in that finance team for a long period of time, whereas a rotation of accountants and finance staff around different departments as to how they're doing things. I don't know if that's a policy that's in place or.
Chair, when we've looked at this before, it doesn't appear to be that there's any specific managed rotation. It's also highlighting the issue that the committee had discussed earlier about succession planning for ultimately key budget officials. Where do those successors come from, and does everybody understand how the system works? And we've already got the idea, Chair, that you had flagged up a couple of weeks ago about actually having an informal meeting with the finance directors to try and get to the bottom of just exactly how that works, how they work, how they relate to the Department for Finance and so on, to get a better handle on how all this reporting actually works as well.
Mm-hmm. Sir, and again to the Chair, I mean, it wasn't that long ago when we had evidence in front of this committee when we discovered that most of the accounting officers hadn't actually done the accounting officers course. That's only been a fairly recent development. I think there's a cultural issue here that we need to look at, and that needs to be a work strand I think we need to be involved in, because we're the ones responsible to supervise the public monies.
And again, this is the overlap in this. Tomorrow at Public Accounts Committee, we've got the Treasury.
I don't want to strip on the
we've got the Treasury Officer of Accounts in to talk about as a central place, and the guidance on that. So there is a natural overlap to both the role of the Department for Economy in this and then our role picking up going forward. But for me, really specifically on these here particular outturn figures, this is the movement between the January report and the February, and there are a number quite significant right across 2.5 pages there. 2.5 pages just for the Department of Economy of reclassifying things like, for example, like reclassifying some salaries between capital and classifications. There's a lot of movements from 1 month to the next out of that department, and in light of the fact that we know that they're opening balances for 24-25, the CNAG is unlikely to stand over those for this year, and these are the movements during the year. I'm certainly really concerned to it, and I think that we definitely have a role.
I think through the Chair, that looks to me, looking at somebody as an outsider but who's held a senior financial responsibility role, that looks like somebody trying to make the sums add up.
Yeah, so and I definitely think that it's just important for us to.
Chair, as an initial first step, would members be agreeable to writing first to the Finance Minister, highlighting all these issues, both for DFI in terms of NI Water and also the movements that committee have scrutinised today in the outturn, as a first step, asking what exactly the Finance Minister's view on all of this is, and what sort of engagement has been going on with the other departments over these issues, because they are being flagged up in the outturn. There's an unusual degree of activity. We've not seen that level of activity before in the papers that committee have seen. So if members are agreeable, it's the first step to establish what the finance minister's view is and then go from there.
Yeah.
Could we also at this stage? Sorry, no. Could we also maybe write to the
Copy to the other committee.
to the economy committee to flag it up that we are concerned?
But I should have said that, Chair. Obviously, we'd copy the letter to both
Yeah, that was the
committees
next
just
point
to flag
there.
up.
Steve, did you want to come in again?
No, it's just another one. There's two issues here that have been raised with both sort of infrastructure and economies accounts as well. I wonder if, because one of our other responsibilities is the Northern Ireland Civil Service reform in the back of the RHI report. And one of the things was the changing the professionalisation of the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board and how it's reporting. I would like to know whether the of accounting and of public monies is now in their risk register of the board, and if it's on the risk register, I would hope it's red, because we've got real problems here. I'd just like to know if that is on the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board's risk register.
Thank you.
And if anybody's concerned about the VAR it's because our VAR is also to look at RHI reform to do that as well.
No, absolutely. And again, this information is very useful, and it comes to us through the returns for through the budget department, and I would seek agreement of members to copy this data to the other statutory committees and the Assembly Audit Committee as usual. Thank you. And the feedback on that has been good, because this level of information coming from us, just brings it to the attention of them in this useful format. So I refer members to page 31 of the tabled pack. The department has commissioned the 24-25 provisional outturn exercise. Returns from the departments are due by the 14th of May 2025. This position will inform the amount of resources which can be carried forward under the budget exchange scheme. Departments have been asked to provide provisional outturn figure work and explanation for any over or under spends. I just wanted to ask with regard to this, so obviously this is the February outturn that we're looking at today at the end of March. Would it be standard practice for us to get a March period 12 return to see where that's at, plus a period 13, because I know just from my time previously working and coming in as a public sector auditor, there will be a March outturn that's not the final year end. There'll be a period 13, but I would be interested to know, like, obviously as part of their normal reporting process, they will be having to respond. So would we have another one in the meantime, because it just feels like very long after year end for returns to be coming in for the 14th of May, us debating the 25-26 budget, and we don't know the outturn.
We expect that to happen. We have a due date of the 30th of April, so we would have it basically theoretically for the first meeting back after Easter. Members will recall last year we did get a 13th period outturn. It's, as you say, Chair, it's normal practice, and then we do a bigger briefing then once we're into the new financial year, and we have the full final outturn for 24-25. That'll be an oral briefing in itself. So yes, the answer is yes. We'll expect those figures for the first meeting after Easter.
No, thank you. It just does, as I say, you're hitting the end of the year, and in the financial circumstances that we're in, with the agreement, the financial package in place, and looking into the 25-26 budget, we want to know as quickly as possible what the closing 24-25 has landed like. So if we could seek agreement of members to copy the commissioning material to other statutory committees and the Assembly Audit Committee for their information. Thank you. Okay, so moving to
Is here.
There is here. Super. Thank you. Moving to agenda item 16. That is wealth building measures and an oral briefing from Raise. So if I could refer members to page 472 of the meeting pack. We have a research paper prepared by Raise as commissioned by the committee. So I want to welcome Nathan Mulholland, who's our Assembly researcher, and invite him to make a brief opening statement on this. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the committee for having me this afternoon. I'll provide you with a brief summary of the paper, which considers community wealth building measures and how these are implemented in neighbouring jurisdictions. The approach I'm going to take this afternoon is I'll first look at some background on the development of community wealth building. then an overview of community wealth building initiatives in local areas across the UK and Ireland, the current position in the other devolved administrations, and finally a few potential issues to consider in terms of community wealth. So to start off, community wealth building, just to define it, is a progressive approach to economics and economic development. It seeks to change the way that economies have come to function by aiming to retain more wealth and opportunity for the benefit of local people. So the background of community wealth building is it was first articulated in 2005 by the Democracy Collaborative, an American think tank. The Democracy Collaborative have subsequently developed 5 pillars of interventions which assist in community wealth building. These are inclusive democratic enterprises, for example, social enterprises and cooperatives, locally rooted finance, the examples referenced include community banks and credit unions. Fair work, this includes living wage and advanced trade union rights, just use of land and property, bringing local land and community ownership, and progressive procurement. And I note here the use of anchor institutions to lead procurement practices. So a number of community wealth building initiatives have been implemented across the world, but 2 in particular have been highlighted for their approach. These are the Cleveland model in Ohio in US and the Preston model in Lancashire in England. So just give an overview of these 2 models just to show the difference in how they have approached community wealth building. So the Cleveland model was developed as a partnership between the city government, universities, hospitals and third sector. This partnership saw the creation of what was known as evergreen cooperatives. In 2008, this initiative began with 3 projects, and these included an evergreen cooperative laundry, an evergreen energy solutions providing energy saving services, and Green City Growers, which was a hydroponic food production. And then subsequently, just on the other side of that, the Preston model of community wealth building was a focus on procurement practices and supply chains to attempt to retain more procurement spend within the Preston area. This saw a reform of procurement practices in Preston. The Preston Council worked with the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, the CLES, to monitor and analyse this work, with the result of these measures having a notable amount of spend retained within the local area over the years since community wealth building approach was initiated. So, as I mentioned there, the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, this organisation describes itself as the curators of the community wealth building movement in the UK. As such, the CLES has worked with cities and regions across the UK and Ireland to help develop community wealth building in these areas. Section 2 of your paper, starting at page 479 of the pack, provides a table of these projects and a description of that activity undertaken. The committee will note that that table is quite long, so I'll just give an overview of a number of recurrent themes that can be identified across the local government areas considered in the table. Not all the identified themes apply to all the areas, but the number of themes have occurred in a number of the particular areas identified. So these themes include establishing a network of anchors, using community wealth building to improve access to employment for disadvantaged or marginalised groups, using community wealth building as a means to address climate change, for example, green jobs, decarbonising house stock. Applying community wealth building towards housing by supporting locally led development and decarbonising and retrofitting. The development of a dedicated community wealth building post within local governments. The development of a dedicated community wealth building strategy. And a number of local government areas have also included community wealth building in their post-COVID recovery plans. So turn to section 3 of the paper, starting at page 496 of the pack, and this considers the current status of community wealth building in the other devolved administrations in Scotland and Wales. So the Scottish Government has included community wealth building as a means to support their wellbeing objectives as an approach to its economic development. Notably, in 2021, the Scottish Government's Programme for Government set out plans to introduce community wealth building legislation. Since then, there has been a consultation on community wealth building, and it has been included as a measure to support economic development and other strategies. Subsequently, the 2024-25 Programme for Government recommitted to legislate for community wealth building, but to date, no bill has been presented to the Scottish Parliament. From a Welsh perspective, the Welsh Government appointed the CLES as its community wealth building partner in 2019. This saw the creation of 5 public service boards across Wales in supporting those PSBs. And the CLS has undertaken a number of initiatives to help these bodies implement community wealth building. So they did spend analysis, procurement and economic development workshops, they created working groups, and they did anchor institution collaboration. The paper has also identified a number of potential issues arising from the approaches taken to community wealth building, and this should begin at about page 500 in your pack, that's section 4. So first, the paper considers the concept of taking a national approach to a theory which is designed to be local and community-led. For example, the Welsh Centre for Public Policy has noted that community wealth building is designed to be community-led and responsive to the need and wishes of local communities. No one-size-fits-all solution. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and such as national legislation or policy will meet the needs of those local areas. Another issue identifies the potential additional cost to set up community wealth building structures, and this is in terms of community wealth building seeks to use additional resources or existing resources differently. However, the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations note that such systems can be difficult without funding to get the, as they put it, the grease on the wheels in order to the process up and running. And the final issue identified in the paper is that one of the interventions note that that community wealth building is about just use of land and property, which seeks to see community or employee ownership of local enterprises. But a Compass, I believe it's a Welsh organisation, so apologies for the pronunciation. Previously the Wales Cooperative Centre points that the organisations are therefore in competition with the private sector. These local community-led organisations and the private sector are competing for the same either properties or land to have those enterprises on. To address this, Compass has recommended legislating to give the communities first refusal of such assets. I'll conclude that despite these concerns, it should be noted that the successful community wealth building implementation may arise from work in relation to the political, legal, financial and societal factors that are unique to a given area. As noted, community wealth building is one approach to economic development. Therefore, in a wider regional context, it may be one of a number of other approaches that could contribute to wider economic growth and prosperity. Thank you, and I'll take questions.
Thank you very much for that. And yesterday I had chaired the all-party group on voluntary community sector, and actually community wealth building had come up there, and we actually, just when you're referring to Scotland, we had the CEO of the Scottish voluntary sector organisation on, and she was just referring to a lot of what you said and how she would have ambitions to hope to progress that there. I just wanted to ask you in terms of this. Obviously, we're sitting here with Finance Committee, and community wealth building sometimes is tied in with Department for Communities. Do you see it sitting with one department, or do you think is it like an executive approach?
As a point in the potential issues of concern, the basic concept is that it's community-led. So therefore, the intervention that either the executive or any department have, it sort of is in contradiction to those terms. I'm not saying there isn't a role to play, but a lot of the academic research around this is that it has to be led by the local groups, and they have to take the lead in this. There's definitely a role, I believe, in what I've seen so far for support, and I say at the levels of, or the examples given, it's usually at a city council level. So the council level would be where they've led so far. The role what's happening in Scotland and Wales in particular, as I say, Wales have divided theirs up, that they've created these regional groups to cover the area. Scotland seems to be slightly unique in trying to do a national policy, and at the minute, until we see what that legislation entails and what they intend to do, the workings in that are unknown at the minute. So at what level a executive or a department has, when you're leading with an academic concept about ground level roots up sort of development, I'm just not entirely sure until maybe that piece of legislation in Scotland came to pass and we've seen what were the outworkings of that, when maybe we can make a better decision. But at the minute, I would be uncertain based on sort of the core principles of what community wealth building was initially sort of set up as local people seeing their local area and identifying where they can fill a gap to drive economic growth in that area and provide jobs and support for people. So.
Which ultimately is the ethos of the majority of your vulnerable community sector, because they've recognised a niche in their own community, a need, they've built on it, and they've got government funding or fundraised, to build into it. So it is the natural space, but it's just trying to find that space in the government structures to take it forward. I'll just take in members here. Owen Tennyson.
Thank you, Chair. Nathan, thank you for that briefing and that presentation. I'm really interested in the fact that Scotland had a Social Value Act, I think it was in 2015, and is now considering moving forward with the Community Wealth Building Act. How do those two things interact? There's obviously a lot of confluence between the idea of social value and community wealth being, but what are the key differences and how do those two things relate?
Absolutely, and I'll be honest, and when researching this from an academic point of view, that seems to be one of the criticisms of how to separate community wealth building and social value, and a few of those other wider, corporate social response. There's a lot of sort of words going about and phrases and acronyms. How to separate these out? I think they work in unison together. Social value, it depends how it's applied. I think in Northern Ireland perspective, the guidance from the department is about 10% of value of contracts and things like that there. The community wealth building, there is an aspect of that progressive procurement, but there's also a lot of other issues, and that's why I try to make the example there in the difference between Cleveland and Preston. Preston took a very proactive role in the procurement side of it and try and do that, and that probably sits a bit more with the social value aspect. But then the Cleveland example is very much more the cooperatives and that kind of, I say those 5 pillars. I don't think those 5 pillars aren't necessarily you have to have all 5. It's about adapting to your local sort of community and what you need, and you trying to bring them all together. But in those cases, one of those particular pillars led, and I think other parts of it they tried to involve, but very much you see that. So very much from what I've read, there are certain criticisms of trying to individualize each of these concepts and make it clear. There's a bit of a blurring that is hard to sort of break away. But I say with work and perhaps more collaboration with, like I say, that CLES group, they seem to be over this across the UK. They may be able to give more definitions how they view how it's separate to those social values. But as I say, from what I've done in the research, it is harder to sort of break up those things away. So
that's helpful. Thank you.
Jerry Carroll.
Yes, Nathan, apologies. Just had another event I was sponsoring there, but I read the briefing, really good. I think anything challenging sort of private ownership of wealth is an important thing and a good thing, and essentially we have more of that. So I really appreciate the briefing, and somebody once said that the economic system isn't broken; it's set up to serve those who it was meant to serve, which was rich, powerful people. More a comment than a question, but I think the report in the press showed that somewhere in the region of £415 million was leaking out of the local economy, which obviously is quite major. We had a briefing a few months ago from to say that one of the local banks were investing somewhere in the figure of, I think, £3 billion outside the local economy, and there's a whole question of whether that's ethical investment or where that's going. So more a comment than a question, but I think that's quite interesting, and it really brings me back to that briefing. But a really useful briefing. Thanks for it.
Any other members? No? Well, thank you very much for that, Nathan. We really appreciate it, and it's great to have that information and the really good examples, because I think that's what we need to go from on that, in terms of, you're seeing it happen in different towns, and that's how you can relate it to what could potentially work here. So thank you very much for that, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much, Connie.
Okay, members, so if we follow up on that, no?
Chair, just to flag up, we have a part of our terms of reference for our banking inquiry allows for us to do some preliminary work around where we want to go, where the committee wants to go with community wealth building. So that paper will act as a core discussion point just going forward when we look at that. Okay. Hopefully we'll get to reflect on that prior to the summer recess once we've finished all the briefing on the banking inquiry.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you very much. We move on then to correspondence, agenda item 17. So item 17.1, there's a letter from the Chair of the Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. For refer members to page 506 of the meeting pack. We've been copied into correspondence from Lord Carlisle of Berriew. No?
I think that's probably as likely.
The Chair of the Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland regarding the Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee discussions on the ongoing transitional introduction of the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, and its potential implications for Northern Ireland. I ask members to note this. Thank you. And moving to item 17.2, we have a member of the public who's written a complaint regarding HMRC. Refer members to page 508 of the meeting pack. We've received correspondence from an individual regarding a complaint about access to the government gateway. The complainant has already been made aware of the avenues of redress by the Department of Finance, and you recognise there's concerned raised, but I would seek members' agreement to note this and that the clerk staff inform the complainant that the committee does not pursue individual complaints unless it's directly linked to strategic priorities of the committee. Thank you. Items 17.3 and 17.4 are Hansard transcripts on the banking inquiry. I refer members to pages 515 and 524 of the meeting pack. Hansard transcripts have been produced for oral briefings which took place on the 12th of March 2025 in respect of the committee's inquiry into the Northern Ireland banking and financial services landscape, briefings from the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters and from Malile Community Association. Can I ask for members' agreement that these transcripts will be added to the committee's evidence base for the inquiry? Agreed. Thank you. And agenda item 18, our draft forward work programme. Refer members to the draft forward work programme at page 530 of the meeting pack and hand over to the clerk.
Chair, the key thing to flag up is obviously next week we have our visit to Kilkeel, the banking hub, and we're having the meeting in the Kilmorey Arms Hotel. We're just handing out, we circulated this before the members in hard copy, and we'll email it out again as well for the members that are online. This is just our agenda for the day and a few maps around getting to Kilkeel. The other great news, Chair, that you have shared with us is that the roadworks have now been finished. So it's a fairly straight road down. I was going to say you can't get lost, but we managed to get lost when we did our site visit. But that was
you were under a
roadworks,
diversion.
yes,
There's fantastic resurfaced road thanks to the great work of DFI and Gibson contractors going into Kilkeel now. You'll see the road as you come in, and it's fantastic.
For the minister, sure.
It basically we're trying to sort of start with the banking hub at about 12:15, and we think everybody's kind of got arrangements sorted out now. We're hopeful that we've got a good attendance as well. So if members have any questions on that, do let us know. But we anticipate it'll be a shorter meeting, obviously, because we have the single briefing from the Chambers of Commerce, and that's fallen largely into place now. We know Newcastle Chamber is re-establishing, so they don't have representatives that they're able to share to come to the meeting at this point, but we do have two of the other Chambers of Commerce able to attend. So everything looks fairly well pinned down for them. As I say, if members have any questions.
Just an observation. There is Park Hall, one of our local schools, is in the girls' cup final at Windsor Park on the morning of the 2nd. So I'm going to go for the beginning of the game. It starts at 10:30, and as soon as the game started, and after Park Hall have scored their dominance and are well ahead,
I'll be there.
I'll be
That's playing one of my local schools, Steve. So so I may be a bit late.
Yeah.
I only got notification of that this week. So.
Meeting starts
12:15.
Well, hub is 12:15. The meeting itself will start as normal at 2, so it gives you that little bit of space. So we'll have the visit to the hub itself. Then we're back to the hotel for lunch with the stakeholder groups. So that'll get a chance to meet the chambers have got some additional traders that they're bringing with them, so we'll get a chance to meet them and so on. So coming into the meeting for about 2 o'clock, fairly quickly into the briefing itself. After that, so if you can aim at least for the getting something deep before we actually start the meeting as well.
To the chair, Dan, how long for us to get down there at that time of day?
From Windsor
Belfast.
Park, I'd say an hour and a half.
We're using 90 minutes as our yardstick pretty much for getting down there generally, so that allows members to stay within all appropriate limits and observe all appropriate
I
traffic.
think if everyone's able to stay in touch, I'm sure we could be flexible and have maybe lunch earlier and push the visit to the hub a wee bit back, because the idea is that everyone's getting a look at the banking hub. So if we
Right next door, and I think
they are
we'll have the
pretty
opportunity
agreeable.
actually to pop in and out.
Yeah.
If members can do that. We have the WhatsApp group, Chair, so if members just keep us updated on their time scales in that. In terms then of the week after that, we have the banks coming. We also have Building Societies Association and the Chief Executive of Progressive, who can come and talk about that sort of local aspect of building societies. Then we have 8 representatives for fingers crossed, we have 8 representatives for the banking session. We're allocating 2 hours to that just simply because there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of areas they'll want to touch. So, as I said before, we have to arrange that slightly unusually in the Senate because we only have the 4 seats. So we're also putting witnesses up into the back tier of the seating in the Senate. We can microphone that up, we have discovered. So that's pretty much our best alternative. Camera will capture people fine, but it just means, annoyingly, they will just be slightly behind members, depending on which side they're speaking from. But in terms of really alternatives, that was our best bet. So that's getting pinned down now. We have had confirmation from most, if not all, by today. And we're proceeding, as we've outlined on that one. In terms, Chair, and this is very much live, in terms of our additional meeting next week, we've got some availability back on rooms. We can get room 30 next door at any point on Monday.
All right.
So there's the potential to meet at any stage of that day. With the Senate chamber, we can only get lunchtime on Tuesday. So it's just whether or not members have a preference for the lunchtime on Tuesday slot, which we can have in the Senate, or we can be flexible, as I said, any point on Monday, depending on what members want to do. I appreciate Monday, it's the later start. There's party meetings. We have the Swiss SR debate first off. I appreciate what Dr. Aiken has said too about potential minister's statements on Tuesday morning.
Just give me
avoid
with your
that as well.
indulgence, Chair. I'm going to just give me a second. I'll just check and see what's the cunning plan is likely to be.
I was going to suggest Tuesday lunchtime might work because at least we know we won't have any
Yeah.
plenary.
Yeah, I was thinking that because there are indications that there might be. So
You
I
would
think
imagine
we can
with
book that, 'cause that
the
stays
budget,
clear.
with the spring statement, I
Yeah.
would expect there's something to drop in on that on Monday, and Monday's going to be very live then. But Tuesday, I would agree there with.
Tuesday was going to be the
sorry,
through the chair, and apologies. I think Tuesday was probably when the finance minister might have made a comment about it because the executive are being briefed tomorrow. But from what I've just been looking at, I don't think they've had much more detail than we've had.
Go for Tuesday lunchtime.
If you do it lunchtime, then
Do
you're
it
not gonna-
lunchtime.
You know it's
would be-
there.
That
Yeah.
slot's there, Chair.
Yeah.
That means that members have more ability to free up.
And
So
then officials would be able to come to us at that point because
Yeah.
if the minister's in the chamber, they'll have to be supporting the
they'll need
minister.
to
So
support the minister.
they
So
will
that'll be our plan. Then we will go for Senate chamber 1 p.m. on Tuesday, and we'll follow up with details for members on that one. In terms of just others to flag up, we've talked about now utilising the 14th of May for Balmoral Show. So we'll just work out, we have a couple of briefings in already, we'll work out just about moving those. Potentially we might do something additional at the Balmoral Show, as well as the surveying on the banking inquiry. We'll have a look at just what's feasible on that. We need to talk to Outreach as to the physical setup they're offering.
Is this the first time that the Assembly's gone on this?
No,
one,
no,
not to the show?
we've done this a lot over the years.
Every committee
with
did it once.
We did, and we right back as far as I remember my first committee, Employment and Learning Chair. That was back 2008 potentially. We did it. We've had meetings down there. The Agriculture Committee traditionally used to meet that week down in the Thrupney bit when it was still at the King's Hall. There was the ministerial get-together as well that a lot of members attended. I don't know that anyone's done it yet at the new site.
Didn't the department will come through? Apologies to the chair. When I was chair of the economy committee, we did it. The RUS give us the farmers give us the tent.
That's right.
And we had an event, and it was talking about food and food economy. I think if we talked to them, I think they'd be amenable to letting us have a committee meeting in there.
I think that's the thing. We need to go back to outreach and just see what exactly the facilities that they can get their hands on are on offer. Ideally, we'd have had a longer lead-in time, but we kind of are where we are. We'll take that away. We'll work with that. We'll bring back a plan. Okay. But if members plan on that basis, the 14th of March will be the Balmoral show, and we'll get all the bits sorted out around that. Sorry, 14th of May. Yes. 14th of March has already gone past. So 14th of May for Balmoral show.
We'll get one a pair of welly boots to wear.
I know some departments and some previous committees have had branded wear. Sadly, the Finance Committee does not fall into that category, Chair.
Okay.
Public money, I think not.
Well, there's probably welly boots lying about. We could probably find some.
Okay. Well, can we get members' agreement on the forward work plan, and that is published on all committee web pages? Thank you. Sorry,
with regards to my situation, I will try. I hope to be down in Kilkeel for 10 o'clock. I have a Standards and Privileges Committee that commences at 10, and I have already warned them that I'll go through the Zoom. But what I will need is a quiet space, because obviously that's a closed committee.
Yeah.
And I would be quite particular in that regard. I'm informed that it's only an hour long, so I should be.
We've already got the additional smaller room that'll be set up for meeting the stakeholder groups. We can use that. Yeah. We can use that because it won't be set up by that stage, so that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. So moving on, agenda item 19, any other business? Have members got any other business that they wish to discuss?
I have one item, Chair, and it's really just to check through you with the committee staff team in case I'd missed it. But have we received any terms of reference for the review that Professor Holtham has been tasked to do on behalf of the department? Because I haven't been able to put my hands on it.
I don't recall. I remember we got the correspondence in hard copy when we were sitting in committee to say that the work had been commissioned, but I don't recall getting anything since that. Is that something we can request?
That's something we can absolutely.
I think it's something that'd be worthwhile requesting, and the reason why I raise it is because there's been, I guess, a lot of discussion now over the past year and more about the need to commission research, and I think we're still in the dark in terms of what exactly Professor Holtham is being tasked to look at, but also how that review is being resourced, whether there's any secretariat support, whether there are any other academics and researchers who will be supporting him, because it is such a big piece of work for one individual to take on, and in the commentary so far it seems to be just that there is one individual that's been commissioned to do it, so I think getting a bit of clarity on that would be really helpful.
Would be, in the terms of reference then would speak to the status of it, because obviously it's been commissioned by the Finance Minister, but obviously the whole of the executive will want to be engaging with that.
Yeah, and will have their own particular needs and things that they would want explored, and also, I mean, Professor Holton obviously has a track record with his work in Wales, but that was as part of a wider commission with a lot of support around it, so I'm just really curious to see how that's being done, because it's important.
Well, that's good.
We follow up on that, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other business? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 20 is our date, time and place of the next meeting, and the next committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday the 2nd of April 2025 at 2 p.m. in the Comori Arms Hotel, Kilkeel, with a visit taking place from 12:15 in the Banking Hub, Kilkeel, in advance of the meeting, which I'm looking forward to welcoming everybody to South Down. And I just put the question that this committee meeting now does adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound.